we are going to suffer from up here because we've opened a window to keep it cooler, and every single bit of paper on this desk is on the move. Can I ask members or officers to refer to page numbers from the published agenda pack to assist all present in finding the appropriate information? In respect of housekeeping, there are no expected fire alarms, and should this happen, please follow the Democratic Services colleagues, and they will lead the way out to the car park at the rear of the building. Jamie, can I have the apologies for absence, please?
You can, Chair. Good morning, committee. We have received apologies from Councillor Wren, from Councillor Reid, for whom Councillor Murphy is substituting, apologies from Councillor Hart, for whom Councillor Hendry is substituting, and apologies from Councillor O'Donnell, for whom Councillor Cravis is substituting. Committee member Councillor Power is also online, Chair. I believe that's all the apologies.
That's it. Thank you. Right. Has anyone got anything they want to bring up from the minutes of the previous meeting? I'm looking at Dave because he does it every single time. Carry on, Dave.
Not always. I didn't at the scrutiny yesterday, but I have got something which I believe is important for page 14 on the EV cross pavement connections. During our debate, there was concern about not moving more rapidly. There were requests that we move forward more rapidly, and there was some assurance given to us that would aim for less than 3 years. Now this isn't currently in the minutes, and there was also comment about learning from others. I think those points I would like to see those points going in the minutes. They were part of the meeting, and I think they're quite relevant to this one. This bit doesn't need adding in, but one reason is other councils are doing this already. And, there is definitely stuff to learn out there and will enable us, I hope, to move quicker than we are. But can that be the bits I mentioned, can those be added, please?
Pauline, thank you, Pauline. Can I have a vote, please, then, on accepting the minutes, please? Anyone got a problem? No, thank you. I just want to add one thing, which I forgot to do in my introduction. The hot water machine is not working in the kitchen next door. If those of you who want cold water, I have filled 2 jugs and put them in the fridge beside the taps so that we have some cold water. Do I have any declarations of interest? No, thank you very much indeed. Right, public question time. I need to take some responsibility because all of the speakers are from my division, and all of them have got a point to make. I'm just going to remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak, and can I ask you to give your name, followed by who you're speaking on behalf of, and then I'll start the clock. The first person on my list is Kay Mackenzie from the Three Villages Flood Group. Welcome, Kay.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, committee. My name is Kay Mackenzie, and I represent the Three Villages Flood Group, which are the villages of Mudford, Ashington and Chiltern Cantelow in South Somerset. My statement and then my question. Following the formal launch of the Three Villages Flood Group in April 2025, a partnership was formed alongside Wessex Water, FWAG, the SRA and Yo Rivers Community Trust. Yo Rivers lead our project. Together, the Three Villages Flood Group and Yo Rivers have mapped key areas of concern and have developed sustainable nature-based strategies across 7 distinct zonal areas. Much of the groundwork is already complete. Relevant landowners have been engaged and a robust delivery infrastructure is in place. We warmly welcome the new £50 million funding to improve flood resilience across Somerset. However, our catchment-wide work highlights that water management upstream directly impacts communities downstream. Holding water in the rural landscape and managing its flow reduces the severity of local flooding while delivering lower cost improvements, biodiversity gains and nutrient management benefits further down the catchment. Our plans will not only benefit the Three Villages flood group area, but could be adapted and used to mitigate flooding in Somerset. To ensure maximum impact, rural communities upstream of the levels must be central to this new investment strategy. Will the committee formally recognise the significant positive impact that upstream nature-based measures in rural communities have on reducing flood severity for larger cities and towns? And my second question, can the committee confirm the timeline and process for community groups such as the Three Villages Flood Group to submit funding proposals and commit to bringing a report to Scrutiny outlining these criteria before final decisions are made? Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Paul, are you answering those two questions? Thank you.
Very happy to do, Chair, and thank you for the questions. So, as the lead local authority, Somerset Council does recognise the importance of nature-based solutions as part of our wider climate resilience measures, both to address flooding and drought management. It's part of the solution and forms part of the wider programme of works that needs to be expanded across Somerset. And a number of benefits accrue, including reducing peak flood flows downstream, temporarily storing storage water in the landscape, and reducing the speed of surface water runoff. Turning to the second part of the question, when we get to the item during the agenda, the officer presenting will talk through the draft ideas to date that could form the Somerset Rural Flood Resilience Programme. At this early stage, further meetings are needed between the risk management authorities that have formed the advisory board for the programme and the Somerset Council executive, who are ultimately the decision makers, before a final timetable and programme of works can be confirmed. What we can say is that we are aiming to seek approval of the final plan from the executive and DEFRA, the funding body, on 23rd of September, which will reset the 2-year period of the programme and start project delivery. It's finally to say, in terms of supporting our communities, this will form part of a wider engagement programme highlighted within the presentation to come, and not individual grants to parishes. We'll obviously give more information and depth to the item when we get there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. The next speaker is Martin Lilly, please.
And a very good morning, Chair, and a very good morning, Committee. Martin Lilly, I'm the Flood Chairman and Flood Warden of Queen Camel, which sits on the River Cam, a tributary of the Yeo. And I'll just merely highlight the previous speaker that we need to have a joined-up approach across all the rivers, whereas if we do work in an individual area, we'll have unintended consequences further either upstream or downstream. Within Queen Camel, the River Cam responds quickly to heavy rainfall because it has a small catchment area. Members of the committee may well be aware of some of the historic flooding, primarily back in 2023, where some 18 houses and 3 businesses were affected in Queen Camel, and the average cost to the householder was £30,000. Chest-high water devastated the communities along the Cam and mass evacuations took place. Prior to this, 2009, 1979 and 2000 were official floods as well, which are all subject to your Section 19 reports. I note that the Section 19 report on the flood in 2023 has been written, but to date, none of the recommendations in that report have actually been actioned by anybody. There are communities at risk right the way down the river, as I say, including Blackford, Sparkford, Queen Camel, down to West Camel and Western Banfield, and areas around the Fleet Air Arm Museum. It frequently results in closures to roads. Whilst that may not seem important, it is important to emergency services, because the main road that runs through Queen Camel is also the main route for the emergency service to reach the 303. And most recently in January of this year, the main road was closed yet again. So the overall, the flood risk is characterised by high by all of the agencies within that we work with in Queen Camel. So any flood mitigation measures are urgently required to protect these properties along the catchment and its tributaries. And measures have been initially identified, and funding of these would obviously be most welcomed as we work with the other communities up and down the river. My three prime questions really to the committee are: what is the time frame for the identification of planned work? Who will be leading these projects? Formal quotes will be required. And what stage is the council proposing bringing the Environment Agency, the SRA, Wessex Water, Yeovil Rivers Trust into the discussions, as they all have a part to play? In my discussions yesterday with Wessex Water, I became aware of some work that they are doing on the River Cam, which actually would supplement or would improve the work that we're doing as well. But those conversations need to take place. More importantly, what are the proposals for the ongoing maintenance of these capital projects? This is a one-off fund, one-off funding arrangement. So it's all very well us building attenuation ponds and everything else, but this is a one-off. Who is going to look after the maintenance of these? And that, Chair, is my summary.
Thank you, Martin. James, it's all yours.
Morning, Chair. James Duval, Head of Service for Climate and Natural Environment. Similar to the last answers in terms of timelines. So timelines of the programme will be, the agreed plan will be the 23rd of September, hopefully if all agreed by Executive and obviously with DEFRA. In terms of bringing those risk management authorities and other members to the table, part of the presentation that the committee will see in a minute, we'll be talking through some of the MOU makeup of that advisory board, and people like Wessex Water, Piers I'll introduce in a minute, who's seconded in from the Environment Agency for 2 years as part of the programme. So we're looking at a coordinated collaborative approach to how we're going to address the £50 million rural floods programme for Somerset. So part of the conversations is about hearing and engaging with our communities, of which every single community which is here has already been earmarked as areas that we need to engage with and actually listen to. Because although we might have desk-based exercises and studies and Section 19s, etc., we need to be able to speak to the local communities and understand the ground truth and on the literally on the ground. So part of the programme, which I will get onto in a minute, Chair, will be about promoting a programme of works where we're actually coming out and working with the parishes to come up with collaborative plans. So that could be actions that the parish feel comfortable to lead forward on, or it could be us as risk management authorities as well. So hopefully the presentation, Chair, will answer a lot of the questions.
Thank you, James. Next person is John Brendan, please.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, committee. I think my job's very easy. I'm John Brendan. I'm from Queen Camel Parish Council, Chairman of the Parish Council. I've lived in the village on and off for many years, so I have seen the effects of flooding there over a long period of time. I think my job's very easy this morning. The first two speakers have really hit the key points about how we manage the whole river, not just individual pockets, so that this fund needs to be carefully spread to capture all the key pinch points where there's flooding or water being pushed on. And also how it's coordinated. So those are the key points that I want to emphasize. But I think also we must use this fund.
We had this yesterday. Carry on, John.
Am I all right now?
Yeah. You're not going to blow up.
I mean, then I think the key thing is that how this fund is used, because there's been such a human and business cost at flooding. And if we don't actually take advantage of this very substantial fund to really improve the situation, so we don't get constant flooding of houses, constant businesses being shut down. For example, in Queen Camel, we've got the old school site, which we was taken off the county council, which is a business community centre, and that has been flooded out and had to restart itself twice. We really need to get this fund to control flooding and alleviate it upstream as far as possible, because the more it comes down, the bigger the problems. So it's really managing, coordinating and using the fund are my three key points. Using the fund very successfully to mitigate problems. That's all I wish to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, John. Jane Catterall, please. It's all right, Jane, it's been left on.
Thank you. I'm Jane Catterall. I'm chair of Sparkford Parish Council. So really reinforcing the points that have already been made. Having received the notice of the £50 million Flood Resilience Fund, Parish of Sparkford wishes to be considered for funding along with all the other parishes along the River Cam. Flood levels are expected to increase and has already been shown in recent years. And with several houses already been flooded in the village and a number of others who are threatened, we would look to alleviate flooding between the settlements so that the villages don't flood. This needs to be a whole river scheme tied in with other agencies such as the SRA, Wessex Water and the Environment Agency. And I would like to ask how these capital projects would be maintained going forward. Thank you.
You've been volunteered again, James.
That's fine, Chair. Thank you. Yes, as I said, I think in one of the other points, the risk management authority partnership collaborative approach is a critical way that not only are we going to deliver this programme for the next 2 years, but also look beyond. So it is about cultural changes, it's about finding a way where we are more collaborative. We are looking at solutions as a collective rather than as individual organisations. So part of this presentation will be exploring not only the programmes and what we're going to be delivering, but looking beyond as well. And that includes some of the capital and revenue projects. So I haven't got all the answers at this stage because we're still in the middle of grabbing all the ideas that are coming forward. And there have been a lot of communities that have been coming forward and expressing the needs. You know, actually you're hearing just a small number today, but I would say there's been 30, 40 plus, which has been coming forward with very similar issues. So yeah, hopefully the presentation will answer a lot of the questions.
Thank you, James. Will you ever have all the answers?
No.
I have one more lot of speakers, Donna Smith or Andrew Chamberlain. Who is going to actually speak? Mind your head, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Andrew Chamberlain. I'm here with Donna Smith and we're representing Marston Magna Parish Council. This is a village that's located in one of the upstream catchments of the River Yeo. We're close to Queen Camel, but our catchment is separate. We are frequently impacted by flooding from a combination of surface water runoff, overbank flooding from a watercourse, and unregulated discharge from a combined sewer. The causes of the flooding of the village and the options for its mitigation were detailed in a survey commissioned and published by the Somerset Rivers Authority in 2021. Needless to say, those measures have not been implemented. We intend to apply to the Somerset Rural Flood Resilience Fund for the resources required to implement some of the mitigation measures recommended in the SRA's report. We note that an implementation plan for the allocation of the rural flood resilience funding has not yet been developed. As part of their implementation plan, will Somerset Council be able to provide advice to communities such as ours in their preparations of bids for funding from the flood resilience programme? Thank you.
Thank you. James, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, certainly. Yes, actually, the community resilience aspect is quite an important part of the programme that we're proposing. And again, I must state that what I will be presenting is ideas and thoughts from officers at the moment. I'm very aware that there's other risk management authorities who want to influence the plan, and obviously the executive are the decision makers. So what I'm presenting today is very much ideas, but we're drawing from a lot of the communications, the emails, the conversations that we've had, not only from communities, risk management authorities, councillors and MPs. So I feel that there's a framework starting to come forward, advising our communities, supporting the communities, coming up with shared collaborative plans, but also being able to look at the long term as well and be able to plan for resilience of communities and individual households is going to be a critical part as climate impacting events start coming more frequent. So yes, I think that would be something I would like to do. I'm very aware that there is conflict in terms of what this money is spent on, whether that is communities or in the middle of the levels and moors. What I'm trying to do is to find a more blended approach, and hopefully the presentation will highlight that. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Andrew, could you turn off the microphone, please? Thank you. Alan? Not going to accept a long speech.
Won't be a long.
Because this is the end of the public
I think that one's working.
question time, and we are.
I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I acknowledge all the points they're making, all these people who have been flooded, etc., over a period of years. But if we thought this meeting was going to be about that particular area, surely we could have all brought our own areas in and speaking this morning. I represent more than in Foregate and people like that.
Alan,
sorry.
The members of the public asked to speak at this meeting prior to us discussing the 50 million. You knew what was on the agenda. You could have brought in your own parishes. Right, thank you. That's the end of the public question time. I'm going to change the agenda slightly, and I'm bringing forward the M5 incident management and response time people. If you could, one of you or both of you come forward to the public. If you pull one of your chairs forward, there's room for 2 or 3 of you to sit at the table. If you could please pull the microphone towards you when I ask you to speak. I'm not going to ask you first. Richard Wilkins, who is the highway portfolio holder, would like to start the meeting on this particular subject. Mike, you're going to be asked next. You don't want to speak, Richard. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, Chair, before we begin, I'd like to thank and welcome colleagues of the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office and National Highways and everybody else who's come really mob-handed. It's really impressive that you've come to this committee, and we really appreciate your work going forward. We really do appreciate the willingness to engage with this with scrutiny on this matter, which has significant concern to residents, businesses and communities across Somerset. Today I'll be wearing 2 hats. Firstly, obviously, as Somerset lead on transport and highways, but my second hat is that of Vice Chair of Peninsula Transport, the region-wide Strategic Transport Board. So the year-on-year increase to the frequency and duration of the closures on the M5 and the far-reaching, indeed region-wide impact these incidents can have when traffic is displaced onto the local road network. When the motorway closes, our roads can quickly become gridlocked, affecting people's daily lives, disrupting businesses and services, and placing considerable pressure on our communities, local economy, and the wider Southwest economy. Not to mention the devastating impact to any individuals and their families who are directly caught up in any incident. I will be approaching this discussion in a positive and collaborative spirit. We have seen the benefits of strong partnership working before, including the award-winning and successful delivery of the improvements to Junction 26, which enabled National Highways to continue to use their depot whilst work was undertaken to deal with a 50-year-old concrete carriageway, and the imaginative use of that scheme to support emergency services training. And just on the fact that it's award-winning, it's worth pointing out that when I say award-winning, just over £5 million scheme in Somerset beat a £500 million scheme further north, and a £5 billion scheme in Hong Kong. And if you want to learn how we manage that in Somerset, how our colleagues in the major schemes team managed to win this award, and rightfully so, I'm sure that's something you could add to your list on scrutiny here. But anyway, so I am keen to explore what more can be done collectively to reduce both the number of motorway closures and the length of time the motorway remains closed when incidents occur. It's also worth noting the collaborative work we do with our partners with the police in general, on general road safety. Although I do note that having put together a regional partnership on road safety, you've decided to pull out of that scheme. I can only presume that you have a resourcing issue, but that's for another day. We're also very interested to understand how the experience on the M5 through Somerset compares to other parts of the country, and whether there are opportunities to learn from best practices elsewhere. We look forward to a constructive discussion on how we can work together to improve the outcomes for everyone who relies on this vital route. Apologies if I'm preempting the committee. However, I think that there are questions that I would like to see answered today. So the first two really just sets where we think we are and whether we are on the same page. And so my first question is, does each of you accept that there is an issue, for whatever reason, with the frequency and duration that the M5 is closed, and that this problem is increasing? Secondly, do you accept that the frequency and duration of the closures causes an unacceptable impact on the county and the wider region? Thirdly, what work have you or are you doing to identify the root causes of this? Fourthly, what comparative data on other areas, for instance the M25, on the duration of closures have you brought to this meeting? 5, have you identified solutions to the problem we are experiencing? What are they, and what resources are required to enact them? And 6, finally, how can Somerset Council and members around this table and further do to help you achieve all of the above? Again, I just want to really appreciate the fact that you've come here to answer questions. And I'm reliably informed that Councillor Dingwall is holding Councillor Bradford on a short lead.
Thank you, Richard. Good morning, gentlemen. I don't know who you are. I've got a list of 4 names, if you could please tell us. Say what you want to say, answer Richard's questions, and then I will take questions from the committee addressing. I also know that Councillor Rigby has turned up off of vacation because he asked for this in the first place, and it's taken 9 odd months to get you here. Thank you.
Well, good morning and thank you, Chair and the committee, for inviting us. My name is Ian Thompson. I work for National Highways and I lead on the forward programme investment, and I also lead on stakeholder relations. That's across the whole region. I'm going to introduce the route manager for Somerset.
My name's Johnny Hill. I'm route manager for Somerset, Devon and Dorset. And I think we've met before, Henry.
We've met before, Jonathan. Is Carl Parfitt here?
So,
okay, do you want to come forward, sir, so you're part of the table, or are you happy to speak from there?
I'll come forward when I need to.
Okay, thank you.
So, Chair, what we'd like to do today is first of all, National Highways, we're going to talk about the road and then speak to our partner and then invite, if we may, our colleagues from Avon and Somerset, or our partners from Avon and Somerset, to come and give their input. I'm also joined today by who's going to be the new route manager for Somerset, is Catherine Wiltshire, who's sat behind me, and our head of performance, Rob Penny, who've all travelled here today. So if I may, I'll carry on just with a bit of an introduction, which will answer some of the questions raised by Councillor Wilkins. So first of all, just to clarify what National Highways is, we are a government-owned company with the responsibility to manage, operate, maintain and improve the strategic road network, which M5 is a part of, the 621 miles we manage in the southwest. We are not an enforcement agency and we have no investigative powers. So we are responsible, as I said, to manage, operate, maintain and improve the strategic road network. Firstly, we're fully aware that 2026 has not been a good year for the M5. We've seen a number of high-profile incidents which have caused significant disruption. We're sorry, and we fully appreciate the impact that these incidents and closures have, not just on the local communities, particularly of Bridgewater, Taunton and the surrounding villages, on the approved diversionary route, and also the impact it has on UK PLC. One of our responsibilities is to keep UK PLC running. And obviously these incidents happen when the M5 is closed for these periods. We have a strong working relationship with Somerset County Council officers, both operationally and strategically. We meet with them on a regular basis, we review data, we look at communications and ensure that they our partners at Somerset Council are informed exactly what's happening on the M5, when it's happening, why it's happened when we know, and that allows you to then amplify both the comms of the police, National Highways, and get your own comms out there to the public of Somerset. Just a note on our attendance at this meeting. We have consistently agreed to attend this committee since May 2025. We're here today and we're happy to be here today. So just look on how we run the Southwest. It's going to be fairly high level this. Our command centre is based up at Aztec West. That covers the whole Southwest region. And our on-road traffic officers, so those are our vehicles that you see on the road. We are a 24/7 service. And Somerset, when we look at response times to incidents, is the only county in the Southwest that has 2 outstations, and they're positioned strategically at Edithmead and Chelston. Now, when we look at the resources we have there, that I say work 24/7, they're not parading from, they're not responding from those outstations. They are strategically placed according to the data where we need them to be, at junctions, and you'll see they'll be at the layup points on the main line of the motorway. That is all designed to reduce response times to incidents. It's very carefully thought out. It's regularly reviewed as traffic flows and data changes. We also use strategic signing campaigns around driving standards. That will be around drink and drug driving, middle lane hogging, which we know is an issue on the M5, our trip campaign, and other safety messages to try and reduce the risk. Don't drive whilst tired, etc. And they change through the year. In 2021, we invested over £20 million in our vehicle messaging system on the M5 in the vicinity in Somerset. This also included incident detection equipment, queue detection equipment, speed management, and improved and renewed CCTV assets. So we have invested heavily recently. The M5 in Somerset is now 50 plus years old, and we've identified during our current road investment strategy period, which runs from 2026 to 2031, that the road is getting old. It now carries 44-ton trucks as the rest of the network. As you go further up the M5, it gets older. So if you go up to Gloucestershire, it's 60 years old. But as we know, the section in Somerset is 50 years old. So that means we need to invest a lot of money, and we are doing that during this road investment strategy period, which runs from 2026 to 2031. To make sure that's done as seamlessly and efficiently with the least impact possible, we have established the M5 board to make sure we're not clashing with local roadworks. The majority of that work will happen overnight, and to make sure we've got clear comms and making sure those roadworks aren't clashing with each other. So you're going to see a substantial of investment on the M5 of well over £100 million during this road investment strategy period. We have to do that. It's a key artery into the southwest. As we know, it's essential to the Somerset economy. If we don't fix it, we won't be able to use it, and we will be fixing it. And it's an unprecedented amount of money that we'll be spending over this 5-year period. So when we look at serious incidents we'll clash for the purpose I'll classify it for this meeting as incidents that shut a lane or all lanes or both carriageways on the M5. Typically, if there was a serious incident, be it a person in crisis, a serious road traffic collision, or other such event, that is phoned in to the police via the 999 system. We will respond with the police and other blue light services, but primacy for the decision to shut the road is with our colleagues here from Avon and Somerset Police today, and that will be to manage the risk or investigate the incident that has happened, and the length of time is how long it takes, and the police are going to detail that for us shortly. What we do is work closely with our partners in the police and at Somerset Council to ensure that when that investigation is complete or the incident is complete, we've already been told what infrastructure damage there is to our assets. We already know, and our resources are positioned that once we get that scene back, our traffic officers will attend the scene with our supply chain. So if we've got a significant fuel spill, we've had a vehicle fire, or there's significant damage to the road surface or the barriers, we're there, we're ready. So the moment we get the scene back, we come in and fix what's happened. And we work very, very closely. We've got a good relationship with Avon Somerset Police. We meet with road police and unit leads on a regular basis, and that's being fine-tuned as we go. What we do know from the incidents that have happened, we've gone back the last 6 years, but we've also concentrated on 2026, is that no incident that has occurred that has shut the M5 has been down to our assets, be it the design or condition or maintenance of our assets. It's been down to other factors beyond the control of National Highways. And what we are identifying through that is its driving standards. And we're working with the police, and we're very pleased to see Top Deck. You might have seen it recently in the press and on social media, where they're deploying a vehicle to capture drivers, I suppose, semi-covertly, who are offenders on our road. And this is what we've identified. It's driving standards on the M5 that are causing these incidents. That might be vehicle condition, the way those vehicles be driven, or just poor driving standards. When we move on to the questions, and I think if I may, it may be relevant to bring our partners from the police now. That's the instruction from us. We will answer your questions, Councillor Wilkins, and I think I might have covered some of them there. And I will bring in Johnny to discuss some of the data, because what we do know is we do have collectively an issue with person in crisis incidents in Somerset. And again, we're not the responsible agency in relation to adult social care, but we do see an increased number. For instance, between 22 and 24 in even Somerset Police Force area, we've had 72 suicides, 6 of which have occurred on the strategic road network. Other incidents have occurred in other transport forums or other transport areas that's on national rails, network rails assets. But it's probably relevant now that we hand over to our colleagues from the police, and we'll ensure by the end of it, between Johnny and I and the police, we'll answer all of those questions.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair.
Paul, who is the gentleman beside you?
Go on, Andy.
Good morning, Chair, Committee. I'm Andy Roebuck. I am the Forensic Collision Investigation Lead for Avon Somerset Police.
Thank you very much indeed. If you'd like to say what you
Thank you, Chair.
to say.
Good morning, Carl Parfit. I'm the relatively recently appointed Chief Executive in the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, so I'm here representing your Police and Crime Commissioner, Claire Moody, this morning. The reason we're here is following the bilateral meeting between the PCC and your Council Leader, Bill Revens. One of the issues that was raised was M5 closures and looking for improved cooperation around the management, as well as understanding the background to it. So first thing I'll say is, Richard, thank you. I welcome your constructive approach, and we're really happy to be here. I took on the road safety portfolio about 2 months ago. Given the number of killed and seriously injured we've had on Avon and Somerset's roads since the turn of the year, within the office, Claire has chosen to escalate the priority given to road safety within the extant police and crime plan. So we are more broadly looking to work with our colleagues from Avon and Somerset Police to develop a road strategy, a road safety strategy, which clearly will involve partners. Can't do it alone.
Could I just ask why you decided to pull out then of the partnership?
Richard, can we?
There's a separate letter on
Richard,
to you.
wait.
I can happily take that offline subsequently, Rich, but there is a letter coming back to you from Roads Policing in terms of how they want to approach it going forward as a partner, as opposed to being as the chair trying to lead it. I don't know if that letter's got to you yet, but that is the approach that's been taken, having seen the draft this week. Can't hear.
No, you're going to have to pull the microphone towards you, please.
Yeah, can do that.
And speak into it, not to Richard.
Point taken, Chair. Thank you. Is that better? After 3 decades in the army, you thought I'd be able to project my voice, wouldn't you? I'm going to hand over in a moment to Andy, really to talk through the practicalities of what happens post an RTC, in particular, what our policing colleagues have to deal with and the processes they have to follow, to give you a reality check, if I may, on why we have delays and closures on the carriageways.
Right. If you're ex-army, so am I. I can throw my voice, and so can you.
I will continue. Thank you, Chair. I'll hand over to Andy in a second, to talk through the detail of that. Again, with my experience of major incident management, we're working with local authorities and others previously. I'd suggest that, picking up on your constructive approach, I think what we're trying to do in terms of going forward from here is, whilst we'll develop in-house a strategy for road safety, which is more broad but will involve partners, I think what we're looking for here is, looking at the current coordination and communication we've got during an incident, working to see where we can improve on that. I know sometimes major incident isn't called because of the impact of closures on the M5, and that then triggers a local resilience forum response. That's not always the case. So is there scope or merit in having pre-planned contingencies agreed in advance that identify what resources may be required, and so that we've got a well-drilled, well-oiled contingency for such delays? As you'll hear, whilst all the agencies here present, as you've heard from both National Highways and you'll hear from in terms of Avon and Somerset Police, wish to see, the impact of closures minimised, there is a reality check in terms of what can be done. So what we want to do is work collaboratively with you in order for you to understand the constraints in which we're working with, but also for us collaboratively to be able to mitigate their impact and manage them better. So whether there is the opportunity for suitable contingency planning subsequently to follow, we'll take offline after this. If that sets the context, one thing I'll add anecdotally, I live just off junction 29. I'm a regular commuter now. I'm working up at Portishead, so I transit your part of the M5 almost daily. So there's some lived experience with the incidents that you raise in my portfolio, as well as the sort of more professional side. Thank you for your time this morning. Andy, I think that's hopefully you, and hopefully they can hear you better than they can hear me.
Andy, if you could pull that right close to you. Thank you.
Can you hear me, Chair? Can you hear me behind? Brilliant. Thank you. So as I said, Andy Roebuck. I've got, just as a quick overview, 35 years of policing under me. I know I look incredibly young to have that amount of years, but that's true. 30 years of those, just over 30 years, was as a police officer, which included being on traffic, firearms, as a senior investigating officer for road death, and now as the forensic collision investigation lead for the force. Now, it's a long title, but what does that actually mean? What it means is that I've got a team of, a small team of highly qualified subject matter experts who look at the forensic collision and the scene. So we are the people that will turn up at the scene of someone that has tragically been killed or has such injuries that they're not expected to live. We are notified by the roads policing team of that collision, and we then attend. We have to operate to what is the coroner, and obviously Samantha Marsh we work closely with as far as Somerset's concerned, and we have to work to what is that judicial requirements from her, but also potentially what is the judicial requirements from a criminal investigation, because some of our incidents that we attend, there has been fault, there has been criminal acts, and some of our sentencing can be up to 20 years imprisonment for the death of people. So far this year, we've attended 45 scenes in Avon and Somerset, of which there's been 32 people killed. So we deal with a high number of deaths, higher number of murders. We deal with more than what the force has as far as that's concerned. And as I said, we are a team of literally 13 people. So those 13 people are highly qualified. They are to degree level in collision investigation. So it takes us 18 months just to get one person trained, so to be deployed on their own. Our average time at a scene this year has been just under 5 hours. Now, I accept the road would have been closed longer, because what happens is as soon as the first emergency units do attend a scene, they put a road closure on, which is quite right, because A, it's their safety. They have to operate in a safe environment. And secondly, they also have to consider what is not only the saving of other people involved, or of the main person there, but also for the scene preservation of evidence. Fire brigade, and I hope there's no fire brigade in here, no? They don't perhaps appreciate that, and we have constant battles with them with regards to where they should be driving and not driving, but hey, we need to try and contain as much of that evidence as possible. We are then notified, in which we then attend. And then upon attendance, we will then conduct what is our scene examination. We have to operate to what is the Forensic Science Regulators Codes. And that gives us very stringent rules of how we should be operating. If we operate incorrectly, then we could actually forfeit what could be a criminal investigation. We also have to work to, as I say, the bequest of what is the coroner's. We have to make sure that what the coroner needs, we cover. With murder scenes, invariably, you can have those shut for, or areas closed off, houses closed off for a good few days. We only have one opportunity, because in the back of our mind is not only have we got to do what we got to do as far as our investigation, but we also have to make sure that we open the road as soon as we possibly can. On the strategic roads, I will always preferably like to deploy 2 forensic collision investigators, so that we can then continue with what is the scanning, then the photography, and any then testing that we need to do with regards to the scene itself. So we always look to preferably deploy 2. We are always trying to improve sort of innovation, technology to assist us, which we have been doing. Our scanners that we have purchased have come at nearly £250,000. So to have that, we have limited vehicles which we can utilise and deploy with all the kits. Our cameras are of a high standard, and our IT back office capabilities is also next to none within the constabulary. As a very small unit, unfortunately for the Chief Finance Officer, we're also a very expensive unit, and public spending is quite big as far as that's concerned. As far as what we also try to do is, for instance, our fleet is unmarked. It has got all the lights and the sirens and stuff like that. And the reason being is, if we are deployed on call, we can deploy from home rather than go into our base, which is at headquarters. So we are constantly looking at trying to reduce what is that road closure down by using new technology or innovation. But we have to be mindful of what is the Forensic Science Regulators Codes, because we cannot afford to fall outside of what are those requirements. That, committee, is just a very brief overview of our life. Is there any?
Thank you very much indeed. Right, Mike, your turn. You brought the subject up. I would like to take questions from the members of the committee if you have any. Just put your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. When I thought about what I might say today, I thought I would just read a précis of the last email that I sent to National Highways, to which I have yet to receive a response. It covers most of it. I first wrote to the council's then head of transportation 9 years ago to ask him what was going on with the M5 in Somerset. The closures were becoming more frequent, and I wanted to know if my perception of that was correct and what might be done about it. Many years later, I managed to get some data that suggested that closures were running at around 1.5 per week. Since then, the situation has deteriorated markedly. What had once appeared to be a summer problem was now year-round. This year has been appalling. What I've consistently asked for and have yet to see is updated data, analysis of the issues, and an action plan. We've still not seen any of that. We've spent a long time trying to get National Highways and the police to attend a scrutiny committee meeting, until now without success. So thank you very much to all of you for attending today. Put simply, we've had enough. And by we, I mean the populations and businesses of Cornwall, Devon and Somerset. Following National Highways abandonment of the A303, A358 proposals, we're left with one strategic road in and out of the peninsula, and it needs to work much better than it does. I'm surprised that National Highways has not sought to get in front of this issue. It shouldn't be for councillors like us to drag out the answers. Where is the data, the analysis and the plan? I entirely accept that the plan will take a multi-agency approach to implement, but we're all in the dark here. We've been asking for some time, what is the problem? Is it poor driving standards, poor vehicle maintenance, poor design, poor mental health support, poor enforcement? It might be all of these things, but without the data and analysis, none of us can play our parts in fixing the issues. We've heard today that perhaps the principal issue is poor driving standards, but that's far from the only problem. For example, we have had quite a few mental health incidents on the M5 with people standing on the wrong side of the overbridge railings. But why is there a ledge there in the first place? This is something that can be managed, but nothing's happening. And we can't carry on like this. Regardless of whatever conversations may have been happening in the background, there is no visible progress. The position is immeasurably worse now than it was even a year ago. No one has any idea what we collectively are going to do about it, and National Highways needs to lead on this. We've had the rough end of the stick regarding highways investment in the southwest, and we're not prepared to see the only decent road we have turned into a car park. We've heard today about the careful planning of response stations, signage to improve driving standards, planned resurfacing, but the fact is that it is not working. The situation is getting worse. Yes, 2026 has been bad, but we were sufficiently concerned in 2025 to try to set up this meeting before this year's awful performance on the M5. So I ask again, where is the data? Where is the analysis? Where is the plan?
Thank you, Mike. Who wants to pick up? Jonathan.
I'm going to ask Johnny to come in first, and then I'm going to answer some of the further questions.
I think we'll pick up on the data first. So Yes, acknowledge a number of those points, Mike. I think I sent you a very late acknowledgement yesterday, so apologies for the delay on that, but hopefully you've received that. Just to pick up on the A303, A358 point, that is a decision by government to cancel that scheme, not National Highways. So we progress the business case, we progress all of that through the motions, then that needs to go up to government and the DFT for approval. As far as data goes, and I appreciate the sort of size of the council, but we've met regularly with your portfolio holder, your directors and your members over the last 18 months, particularly to discuss this issue. So I appreciate that the data might not have reached you, but that data is being presented and we've got an updated data set today, which we will go through. I've pulled out some high level figures for comparison of the M5 to the rest of the Southwest region. And I also think it was you, Councillor Hobhouse, who raised the M25 comparison at the last meeting. So we've got a few points to address that. I think to caveat it, we're not, as Ian said earlier, we're not coming here today to say everything is perfect and there's no improvement to be done. But I hope that the figures presented here add a bit of perspective to the issue as well. So high level incident closure rate, and I'll speak slowly because I presume people will be scribbling this down. But our incident closure rates for the M5 compared to the Southwest region motorways is very comparable. So 1.23% for Somerset, 1.14% for the rest of the region. As Ian's alluded to, there are a disproportionately high level of persons in crisis incidents compared to the Southwest. So you in Somerset have 12.9% of the region's motorway network, 15.7% of incidents leading to a closure, which is relatively comparable, but 29.1% of the persons in crisis incidents leading to a closure. The collisions leading to closure is, as we would expect, or even a touch lower for the network length you've got in Somerset, which is 11.2%. And then when we look at fatal incidents, average lane closure time is 563 minutes for the Southwest region, but 412.8 minutes for Somerset. For customers in crisis, the figure is slightly above the regional average at 391 minutes compared to 376. Now, whilst I don't want to get sucked into the M25 discussion, as they're pretty incomparable bits of network, across the 6.5 years of data we've looked at, the average duration for an incident that involves a full closure differs by approximately 9 minutes. And the average incident duration of all incidents differs by only 0.2 minutes. So we fully accept that the May, June particularly was an incredibly painful month for Somerset, and that pain is felt by the entire Southwest Peninsula. So I think to allude to the point you made earlier, Richard, we fully accept that, and no one wins when the road is closed and no one wants the road to be closed. So we fully accept that. As we've discussed today, a number of the issues are in relation to driving standards and the persons in crisis, as Councillor Rigby alluded to. That then brings in this entire piece around collaboration. So I think and I hope Bev would agree with me, we've pushed really hard on that sharing of incident data and ensuring that, so we produce NILO reports, for example, which is when an incident kicks off that is deemed sufficiently high profile, that incident gets shared with us. We have added, we've updated our records for the relevant Somerset Council officers. We've also shared that data. So Somerset Passenger Solutions, for example, who run the Hinkley Point Park and Ride, also receive that data. So we've tried to ensure that that level of data is being shared, and also that whilst the information is being shared, the people who are receiving it know who to come to and who to contact to understand further. So your communications department receive correspondence when those incidents are happening so that they can try and amplify the messaging that we put out through our social media. We also understand resilience. So whilst we appreciate the corridor of improvements has been that A358 cancellation by government, we are looking in RIS3, which is our 2026 to 2031 funding package. We are looking at the route between South Petherton and Honiton, and how we can look at that route slightly more holistically, rather than just junctions, which don't necessarily come up as cluster sites that need improvements. But if we look at that route holistically, can we try and reduce the number of incidents on it and therefore the resilience of it to the network, whilst also with the M5, we look to address flooding hotspots. We've improved the VRS, so the central crash barrier, as people would know it, and we will continue to do those things. So yeah, we are here today. We've always agreed to come to this committee, and we're glad that we've got a date. But we think alongside both not just looking at hard engineering, but also looking at comms, communications, campaigns, messaging, and encouraging people to plan ahead, that hopefully that holistic piece helps to address the issue that all of us want to address.
Thank you, Mike. Are you done? Alan Bradford, you're first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you, Councillor Rigby, Councillor, for supporting this, what I brought forward some 3 years ago, actually, at North Petherton, when I was the mayor. And it took about 3 months, but people did attend and acknowledge our concerns and our complaints about the area. Because North Petherton been stuck between the M5, A38, adjacent villages, which is a lot of, it's a real congestion area. And I had to raise this because things have got worse. In fact, we had 3 incidents on one particular week. I made the headlines on a little move I made. I thought I'd just make a point, sign off, job done. It did make a point, and people be very, very interested. I've had the Telegraph from London ring me for interviews and pictures regarding traffic issues regarding villages, the M5 closure. But I've made a point, and I shut off there. Right, acknowledge the very difficult jobs you got. First of all, is it down to more money for no? For different departments,
Well,
so you got more staff.
I'll let the police answer that.
You know,
we're investing 1.3 billion in South West in this 5-year period. So
money is always a big factor, isn't it, into policing? And we do know that even Somerset as a constabulary is underfunded when compared to other forces. And I know quite a few chief constables have tried to take that forward to and MPs forward to government, regardless of whether it's Labour government or Conservative government. That voice hasn't really ever been founded. But there is, funding is difficult for policing, and we have to prioritise what we do. Roads policing is an area that needs significant funding, as does my unit as well. Would I say that throwing more money at it is going to necessarily help? It will help to a part, but I do think that it has to be, when you look at the causations and root causes of what we're dealing with, it has to be a wider spectrum. It needs other services within the council and other public sectors to also prioritise and deal with their respective areas.
Thank you for that. If I could, Mr. Chairman, I won't carry on too long. Don't worry. I just want to make the point of the damage done to villages, the heavy transport for the buses, etc., etc. The volume of cars going to villages aren't made for it. The corners aren't made for it. The widths of the villages aren't made for it. So all we do as parish and county councillors is get people to dig the ditches, repair the wall, repair the corners, and with budgets in like they are, it doesn't happen. And that's why I really brought this to the foresight. In fact, my fellow councillor, Councillor Evans at North Petherton, brought this forward as well. And that's why I got a bit strong. We tend to work together on these things, and hopefully by highlighting it, we're going to get a few improvements. It's a heck of a volume of people, lorries, etc., buses on the M5. I acknowledge all that, but with sometimes when things do slow down and these accidents happen, we had a closure of 8-9 hours at North Petherton not so very, very long ago, actually, and it's really unacceptable because all the money being lost, then people queued going to this area between Taunton and Bridgewater. You meant Taunton and Bridgewater. Well, it's not Taunton and Bridgewater's directly affected, it's the villages surrounding them directly affected, because they'll always be the same regarding the traffic issues. But it is a very difficult thing to come to terms with sometimes. It really, really is. And I feel sorry for all the 4 people that are injured, etc., and death on the motorways. We all acknowledge things like that, and it has to be a difficult shout sometimes. I realise that. But one thing I will mention is the mental health thing. I had a daughter section 6 months ago. This is all known now, right? And I'll bring it to the forefront. I did mention it at the time when they were going to change the rules and change the laws. Now, the police have all the power now to change things like that, not the mental health people. And that's where it went all wrong. I spoke very strongly when I was last chairman of Sedgmoor District Council, actually, about this thing. It was wrong. the way the powers were handed over to the police to take responsibility for mentally ill people. I've mentioned it here this morning because the last 6 months I've had 3 experiences which I could talk here and tell the council, and I won't do that, Mr. Chairman, right? But when I talk, I tend to talk from the heart. I haven't got a script. I haven't got a mobile phone I've got to read from. It's from my practical knowledge, common sense, and some of the things have to change, and that's one of them regarding the police. I think if that was put back to the right people, you could, because there's so many instances now when poor people are in such a dreadful, dreadful state that they threaten to jump off the bridges, etc. And you feel for them sometimes, but straight away they've got no choice but to shut the roads. That's they've got a responsibility to people. But something like that should be looked into, just into. You know. But I thank you all for considering. We've raised the bar a bit higher. I think we have anyhow, and we hope to see maybe a few improvements. If not, my villagers won't be voting for me again, and I shan't be coming to this committee and talking. I bet you're more pleased about that.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure I do things properly. Councillor Wilkins gave us 6 questions at the start. Would it be appropriate now to help with the questions coming from councillors if I cover those off?
I'm going to ask you to let them, and then you can come back if they reflect the same questions, if that makes sense. Alan D. Dingwell, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to try to keep questions in the spirit of a scrutiny committee. We don't have a policy to scrutinise here. We've had a report come in, and we can ask some questions about that. But what I'd like to do is to get us all to a place where we all have a little bit more knowledge that we can build policy, or the executive can build policy, rather than necessarily focus on specific grievances or casework. So with that in mind, I wanted to ask a little bit about it, and I'm afraid there are to National Highways. Thank you, firstly, for all of you guys coming in. Really do appreciate it. The data that we see, we talked about a comparison of our data from Somerset to the rest of the Southwest. Is that the best comparison, given the rest of the Southwest Peninsula doesn't really have motorway in the same way? There's obviously the run down to Exeter, but then it's all A roads rather than motorway. So is that comparison the best? And even if it is there a better peer? We talk about peer councils when we compare our finances, for example. Is there a peer network that would be similar, that might be a better point of comparison? The other questions look at some of the points you made around driving standards being the cause of accidents and incidents on the motorway. Is this a national issue? Is this something that's going on everywhere? Is there a nationwide campaign to redo driving tests that we should all be getting behind, or something like that? Or is this something that's on the M5 specifically, and specifically in our stretch of the M5, where there might be road conditions or areas that we should identify and spend some of this many billions of pounds? Well, did you say 1.3? Oh, you said 100 million at one point and 1.3 billion at a second point.
Apologies, the 1.386 is in the southwest.
In the southwest, so about 100 million on the Somerset. Yeah, excellent. So that 100 million, using that to fix specific issues within Somerset that might help. The other question I had around the road is the M5. We're talking about the size of the trucks that are going down there, are much heavier now than they were 50 years ago, and the road was built. In addition to that, are we approaching capacity limits for the M5? I know many other roads that I drive have seen extra lanes added or smart motorway management and all that kind of stuff. That's not something that's on our stretch of the M5 quite so much at the moment. Is that impacting capacity, and is that something that's going to be addressed or should be addressed? And finally, this last question I think points to Councillor Wilkins. The data that Johnny's mentioned is being shared. Is that something that we can have as all councillors? It might just sit in the background for most of us, but we have things like road death shared. We have workforce management shared as far as internal council workings. This might be another email that we can get that just has all the data that we can refer to whenever we need it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andy. I'm just going to add one data question, which is the bit of the M5 more liable to have accidents and deaths on that's in Somerset as composed to the M4 or the M3 or the A303, which I live beside, and we don't seem to have a lot of accidents on the 303.
You're testing my memory and my pen. But as far as the data comparison, so the document I've been referring to is Southwest Region motorways versus M5 junction 22 to 26. So it's a comparison between motorways in the Southwest Region, so the rest of the M5, the M4, M32, M49, M48, rather than looking at the A303 and the A30 and the A38 beyond the peninsula.
So the this might be my own Somerset bias coming in, but I always count Bristol as not the Southwest. But for your point of view, Bristol is
just to clarify, Councillor, we have the M4, for instance,
yeah,
from around junction 14, so east of Swindon,
yeah,
all the way effectively over both bridges, both of the 7 bridges. We also have the M49, which is the spur from Avonmouth up towards the Prince of Wales Bridge. We have the M32, which is the urban spur that goes into Bristol, and the M48, which runs the Severn Bridge, the older of the 2 bridges. The M5 we have from junction 9.
Yep.
Certainly probably not counted as the Southwest unless you live in Newcastle or somewhere. So junction 9 in the vicinity of Tewkesbury, all the way down to junction 31 south of Exeter.
That's actually really interesting because so we are comparing our stretch of the M5 with most of the rest of the M5. Okay, that's clarified. Thank you.
I think your next piece was on driving standards. So it's hard to directly say driving standards on the M5 are worse than driving standards on the M4, for example. And I realise I've just given a soundbite, so I'm saying that's not what I've said. But I think what we do is we look at what's the contributory factor. So if a vehicle has crashed on a straight bit of road on the M5, was the road a root cause for it? No. If we've looked at that, what was the root cause for it? And then it becomes into that driving standards piece. So I think we're doing lots of work with and Ian's mentioned the various operations about looking at like phone usage and middle lane hogging and all that sort of stuff. So we are targeting that. We are looking at it. It's hard to make a direct comparison as to driving standards worse here than they are here. But we look at the engineering piece. Can you just hard engineer your way out of this? Most of the incidents, no. Therefore, it feeds into driving standards. Therefore, it feeds into the campaigns and the don't hog the middle lane and the space invaders and all that wider piece. Capacity-wise, there's a massive seasonal flow. You will all see that as you get close to summer, all your friends from Birmingham are coming through the M5 and the capacity shifts. So there is a massive seasonal disparity between it. Is the motorway at capacity? I don't think no, but are there junctions that are close to capacity? Yes. And do we look at those and do we target those with queue detection, for example? So you look at junction 22 northbound, for example, we're aware that can mainline queue. There are obviously the capacity improvements at junction 25, acknowledging that was close to capacity. So the route itself, the capacity is so variable. The junctions we look at sort of more specifically and what can be done feeding into like growth in the area. So we all know growth and government housing targets and all of that. And then that feeds our planning colleagues into that to make sure we protect the safety of the strategic road network, but also acknowledging that National Highways has a role as an enabler of growth for government. So that becomes a really difficult balance, but one we try and manage. I have a scribble here that says M5 versus M4, and I can't remember exactly what the question was, but I think we've covered it. So does that help? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Richard, you need to be quick.
Yeah, sorry, it's just a bit on the data. I'm going to put my peninsula hat on again and just suggest that we need data that takes out, that takes out the whole of the M5. So we've got the data on the M5, especially in Somerset, but actually it's that whole stretch really from Bristol down to Exeter that is problematical. Admittedly, it's much worse, particularly between junction 23 and 25. is probably the worst stretch, and but we need that data. But two other things. One thing is my understanding on the 1 point whatever billion is that not a penny of that's going to be spent on improvements. That's purely on maintenance and re-putting back assets that are already there. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And finally, really, all of that is kind of irrelevant to the point that really Councillor Bradford is making about the impact of all of this. Whether or not it shows difference or whatever is actually rather irrelevant. The impact to Somerset is incredible, and what we're asking for is analysis of what we can do to make it better. And I'm not really hearing that. That's my only issues. I'm not really, yes, little tinkerings around the edges, but there's not like a master plan to resolve this so that we can go back to our constituents and say, look, we've made a real difference here. And that's what we're looking for. And I'm fully aware that will take multi-agency response. That will be us working with you guys working with whatever, us lobbying government to put the resources in the right areas that we need it. But let's be absolutely clear here. You talked about the 303 to Honiton. Well, that's one lane. It's very different. In places it's one lane on the 303. So sorry. Thank you for indulging me, Chair. Apologies for jumping in.
I think I'll start and then we'll slowly shuffle the microphone right. So data-wise, we can look at any data you want within reason. Obviously, we don't want to spend our entire time just crunching data and looking at super specific pieces. So that is why, for us, the proportionate piece at the moment is look at the M5 in Somerset, because that's what most of the sort of noise has been around, versus the rest of the region. We can very easily take out the M4, the M49, the M48, the M32 data. That is absolutely fine, and do a comparison of that. I think the biggest thing that I always come back to is what are we trying to achieve with this? So fundamentally, does taking the M4 data change what we're trying to achieve? I don't think it does. And that's probably a conversation that we pick up offline with officers and yourself. So I think we want to make sure our time is best spent on trying to fix the issue, not checking super specific bits of data on a M4 piece. So you mentioned the RIS funding. We can't get away from the fact that the next RIS is a massively renewals heavy RIS. So our network was all built at roughly the same time. It all starts to creak at roughly the same time. That time is basically now. Therefore, when you have a funding pot and that package goes up to government, that RIS is going to be renewals heavy. That's not to say there are going to be no improvements. The days of the 303 corridor, we're not in a stage of doing things like that. And that is why we look at things like the South Petherton to Honiton, saying, we know we've got the concerns with the Ilminster bypass and the wider piece. How do we build resilience? And there will also be a number of smaller scale improvements throughout the RIS. They're not going to be as mass grandstanding. Oh, our road investment period. So our 5-year funding period. Apologies. There's obviously also Junction 22A, pretty significant. I get that that's slightly different, but that is significant investment into the region. Possibly pass over towards you.
Yeah, if it's okay, Chair, are you happy for me to just run through the questions I don't think we covered of Councillor Wilkins at the start? I will move at pace if you wish. Of course. What I'm concerned about is, what I'll say is some of these questions, what I'll say to these questions might answer some of your councillors' questions.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so the first question, I made some very scribbled notes from Councillor Wilkins. Do each of you accept there's an issue and it's increasing? We accept the impact and the impact on Bridgewater, Taunton and the villages, including North Petherton, are because the approved diversionary route, which we have to be able to establish and agree with the local authority, in which case Somerset, it's got to be able to take all traffic, and the approved diversionary route when the M5 is shut, goes through rural and urban locations. We accept that is not ideal. The solution to that is to build a new road alongside the M5. It's not happening. So the only way then to deal with that impact is to reduce the number of incidents. So that deals with that. I'm happy to take more questions on this. So we agree, yes, there is an impact which is unsatisfactory. It's not just around damage to local infrastructure, it's down to resilience of your own network, the Somerset's network, and Somerset PLC. We acknowledge, and also it's UK PLC, because those HGVs and those patients going to hospital are stuck in that traffic. We understand that. Root causes of why we're having the incidents, I think we covered that. Is driving standards and person in crisis. Some of these person in crisis incidents are impossible, particularly the suicides that are completed. We have had several where tragic circumstances when an individual pull up on the hard shoulder and enter the live lane. There's no engineering, there's no investment that can prevent that from happening. Identification of solutions. So we need to look at, we're going to continue to work and develop, and I obviously bring on my colleagues in from the police. Partnership working is key here between Somerset, the police, and National Highways around how we can reduce the number of incidents and therefore reduce the impact through that method. And I think we're going to be looking at, I sit on the board in Devon and Cornwall, where we have what's called Vision Zero, which is the road safety partnership. It's multi-agency, blue light, local authorities, NHS. It's very successful. They've seen the incidences of killed and seriously injured reduced by over 20% through their work. Had a conversation with Carl prior to this, and I think there's a joint interest, and this Somerset will be absolutely key to that. Your members, relevant members and officers will be absolutely key. So I think a road safety partnership for Somerset, which won't just deal with the M5, but also deal with your local roads. I can't stress to you how successful Vision Zero, and invite you to look at their website. It's very, very impressive, and it works. It's reduced road deaths and seriously injured. It's a Vision Zero Southwest. That is what we should all aspire to, and I mean the word all, because it will have to be a partnership approach. How can Somerset County Council help members and officers? We've got great collaboration with your officers. We've got strong lines of communication, and I think the route that we're looking at is around managing the impacts through a road safety partnership, reducing it. Lots of little things, because we're not building a new road. Lots of little things will reduce the impact. That's what we'll be looking for. Paul, do you want me to hand this down to you?
Yeah, thanks. I am the new guy. I recognise that. So been getting my head around this is fairly swiftly. And thanks for all the inputs and the questions. I think just building on what Ian said, there is no silver bullet that's going to solve it. But I think if we can get left of the bang and understand and grapple with the causes, that causation bit, and that is about, say, driving standards, and I'll talk a moment about road policing enforcement, incident planning, so anticipating, building on what's already in place, and making sure that we've got the as effective coordination and cooperation in when we have an incident, and then all that lessons then being built into the infrastructure projects that both Somerset Council and National Highways are looking at, that provide both to tackle some of the pinch point issues, as well as improving capacity where we can and mitigating against incidents to start with, particularly on the major trunk roads. I mentioned roads policing, and indeed Andy's talked to that a bit during his piece. You have a proactive RPU, roads policing unit. They are doing not only looking to prevent harm and respond to incidents, but they are conducting proactive operations. They're not only looking at road safety, but they're also looking to tackle crime on the roads. Those same arteries that we rely on and use, so are criminal entities and networks, particularly things like county lines and so on. So, that is part of their remit as well. We are looking at where we can bring new tech in to support both enforcement as well as intelligence gathering on the roads. And they're also looking to influence public behaviour. I'd flag up their recent addition to they've now got a Facebook page to advertise what they're doing and to send road safety messaging as well. Please do dip into it. Feedback is welcome. But it gives you an idea of where they're being proactive, both geography-wise as well as the nature of the operations they're running. And I know they are keen to remain part of this conversation in a collective, say, partnership approach. And in terms of the enforcement piece, clearly we want to see roads policing deployed on the M5, both for its deterrence value as well as then its proximity to response to incidents. And within the OPCC will work well with the RPU to do that. That's me.
I'm going to give you some data. I used to work on the railways. There are 300 people who commit suicide on the railways annually across the UK. The railway police deal with it in a matter of a few hours, not 8 or 9, it's 2 or 3, because it is so regular that they have a proper system to deal with it. There are only, excuse me to say it like this, 50 people who commit suicide on all the roads on the whole of the UK. And we need to learn from the railway police people. I'm not going to take it any further. Marcus Cavis, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Point of order. Sorry, Chair. That's you've raised something that is completely separate. And no. Sorry.
Andy, I haven't raised anything completely separate. The gentleman there were talking about suicides.
Yes.
And the numbers that are dealt with on the railways are dealt with much quicker than they are on the roads.
Chair, you have challenged them for something and then completely shut down their opportunity to come back. Railways and roads are incredibly different. Railways have a track and the situation can be recognised for the tragedy it is quite quickly and how it's happened. Roads work completely differently. My argument here is you've challenged them and then shut down. You've grandstanded a little bit here, and it's a continuing theme through this meeting today. And I'm getting a little frustrated. So I apologise for that frustration. But the argument that you put forward required a response from the team that have come here to visit, and you shut them down, I think, inappropriately.
I accept your view. I'm going to go on to Marcus Kravis.
If I can, Chair, apologies. I support your comments. Thank you. It isn't supported what you said. It is not like for like. It is totally different investigations. I'm more than happy to step outside and discuss that and give you the fuller details. But we operate totally different to other requirements of British Transport Police, and they operate different to us. So I hear what you're saying. It's a valid comment. However, it isn't comparative to how we operate and how we have to operate by law.
Marcus.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully the people at the back can hear me okay. If I can't hear ex-army, I don't know what I'm going to do, because I'm maybe not known from throwing my voice, because when I do, I just sound like an angry, grumpy old man. I actually feel for you, because yeah, I've sat here listened to it, and actually, yes, yeah, I'm one of those that think, what on earth's going on? And yeah, I really feel for what you have to achieve and what everything happens. And then, but you've been talking about how, you know, and they sound, I don't want to use the word excuses, but well, this is what's happening. It's driving standards. It's this is what we're trying to change. But actually, you know, my driving gets worse on a daily basis as I get older. You know, we've got a whole generation and the whole load of people in the country that are just getting older. It's not going to get, yeah, how's it going to get better? So then we go, well, what's the issue? And we said it, I think earlier when they were talking about flooding, people talked about the economy, and they talked about the economy. If I think it got mentioned 3 or 4 times, I had a rant at a lead member of the, well, it wasn't really a rant, it was going to be a rant, and I bottled it a bit, about the fact that, you know, the inadequacies of our planning department ends up being an economic issue and affects everybody's lives. And therefore we look at this and we think, well, actually that 5 hours it's closed, and there is actually a question here, Chair. That 5 hours that the road is currently closed is, well, actually there's a response time. I think you said you actually come from home, so obviously you're conscious of that response time. But then actually, what is the average response time before you're actually on site? And then, of course, the question is in an ideal world, if you had enough people there, so if you try and get 2 there, if you had 4 there, and I appreciate people have then got to work together, but you got technological improvements as well, is what could you get that down to if you had the resource? Because we look at, and this seems to end up being not a Somerset Council or police issue, this ends up being a national government issue again. Everything comes down to money, but how could you get that down to? And you talked about the coroner and you talked about the judiciary. How come the judiciary gets mentioned in scrutinies all the time? We look at our we look at our SEND issues, we look at our children's services, the issues that they have with our modern functioning judiciary in the way that they work so quickly and how they manage to do things so quickly. Excuse the sarcasm. So, is it because the judiciary is actually asking for too much? Because, and we compared, and I know you mentioned the M25. Well, actually, if it's not great here and it's not great at the M25, and it's probably not great in Newcastle or Glasgow, right? What's the issue? How do we actually compare to, I don't know, other countries? How does, if they have a fatal accident in Italy, how long is the road closed? And I know Italy can be quite strict on their driving laws. Well, their punishments, maybe not their laws, maybe not the enforcement of them. So how does that work in, say, places like Italy and Greece, and do actually they have the end results? So, what people moan about, and I think this is the main right, is everybody understands that accidents and bad accidents will happen. Not accidents. We don't have accidents, do we? We have road traffic collisions, don't we? So road traffic collisions will happen. But I think the beef that everybody gets is, why does it take as long as it does? And you can talk about prevention to stop them from happening, but then you're not going to prevent them all from happening. So what can we do to get that time down so actually people get the justice they deserve? You get the investigation, you do a thorough investigation that you can do without it being an economic disaster for, because we're not talking the economic disaster maybe this week or next week or next month. What we're talking about is people sat in Birmingham, for want of, or South Wales, thinking, well, do we go down to Cornwall or do we go and pay 200 quid to fly to Greece? Because actually we're not going to get stuck on the M25 for a whole day, on the M25, the M5 for a whole day. So it's how we get, and it's one of these gripes that I think people say a lot is, we seem to be putting our lives around what the police resources are. And, without being too critical, I know you're going to come back and say, well, we don't, but this is what they're saying is, well, why can't they just do it quicker? I think that's a question. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. It is legislation. That's not the primary driver. Primary driver is for the families. The work we do is to give hopeful answers and closure to the families and the survivors. So behind every road death, unfortunately, there is a Greek tragedy. There's always other things that's happening. When we're at the scene, we've got that limited time. So we do work, but we're within the legislation and what we know, the coroner, there's a deceased, what the coroner is going to be required. And the coroner needs that information for, as it is for Samantha Marsh in Somerset, so for her to go through her judicial requirements, so to then get a verdict on what is the cause of death, whether she's done that herself or with the coroner jury. So for us to operate differently and do less would need change of legislation and change of what is the coroner's judicial system as it currently stands. Can we be smarter? We try. We're using the latest technology that we can get at this moment in time. There's always going to be something else on the market which comes in. Our scanners now are about 3.5, 4 years old. Usually have a shelf life of about 7 years. They enjoy the far range of Somerset weather, which is not a lot different to the Gloucestershire weather that I experience. But they basically, they will have new technology which we need to consider in a couple of years' time. That may reduce certain activities. So we might well be looking at that. But we got to be we do a balancing act with what we do. We got to make sure we meet those minimum standards and those requirements. Our scenes, as I said, is 5 hours on average. Some can be far longer. The M4, which you'll be pleased to know, we had a closure for 15 hours. And that was because a car had collided with another car, killed 3 people, and the driver who caused the collision then was on his toes. And we had to go and find him as well. Well, RPU found him. But the death of those 3 people covered the 3 lanes of that section of the motorway. And it was a huge scenes. We talk about suicides, whether they have gone from a bridge. The bridge rarely kills them. It is the impact of the vehicles below. Unfortunately, that I will describe as being high trauma, which my staff deal with. And that will involve a number of vehicles, which unfortunately can be, one of the latest ones was with 12 vehicles, all of which need recovery because of body parts. So we need to get that, because if there's a hand which has got jewelry on it, we need to get that jewelry. So it is a high trauma area that we're dealing with constantly, but we are very mindful of the closures. We always operate with that in our minds as well. And if we can open a running lane of the motorway, we will work with National Highways so that we can facilitate that and alleviate that, because we are very much aware of that. Hopefully that's answered in parts.
The one specific one was you talked about the average 5 hours and etc. And some are more, and I assume some are less. But you didn't say was how long it takes you to get mobilised. So the right word is probably the right word, isn't it?
Yeah, depends where we start from. So it depends where it is. If it's for us, our base is at Almondsbury. I've got a staff who work from there for earlies and for late, so from 7 a.m. until 11 p.m. So if there is a collision that comes in, they will respond from there. We do monitor the radio. We do monitor. So if we hear, I'm not on about Radio 2 and Jeremy Wright, we do monitor what is the police radio, so that obviously if we start to sense that something is moving, that we're going to get a notification, we start rolling beforehand. So we do look to try and reduce that time down in our travelling time. They are advanced drivers, they're in advanced vehicles, so they make good, progressive, safe progress to the scene. We get there when as safely as we can. So we try and keep that response time down as much as possible.
If I missed the answer, but it's just like, if you had the more resources, how much quicker in percentage terms could you do I know there's going to be difficult because you're going to have, as you just said, you've got some are worse than others, but I suppose you have a more, I don't want to use the word standard incident, but there's some would be worse than others, but on a general,
yeah, I mean, as I say, for the strategic roads, we look at doubling up, and that will allow us for one to do the scanning, one to do the photography, and because once you've started the scanning, it is left to the scanner. It takes the time that it needs to take. We will do as many scans as that scene requires, and obviously the vehicles need scanning, locations of deceased and what have you, that needs capturing, and with photography as well. So doubling up certainly helps, and I have to say that by us doing that, if we didn't, then I think we would be looking at far greater times than what you've currently got. Other forces don't. We're fortunate in Avon Somerset that that is a high risk area that I always look to resource as far as my unit is concerned, and that's even if we call people in from home to supplement and in a dish. So we do that. Gloucestershire, where I'm from, and they don't have that. They haven't got the capacity to do that. And when you look at that M5 section that they have from Strensham Services down to Falfield, similar in Somerset's ways, is that there isn't a lot of support with the road network either side. You've got the A38, and then you've got the glorious Cotswolds, the 417, 419, but they've got some difficult roads there themselves, and I don't say they're necessarily designing out what should be a contingency plan, that when the motorway is closed, I'm not so sure that they're in a good position to deal with the volume of traffic that they have as well.
Thank you, Marcus. Pauline Ham.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is a fairly simplistic comment or question. Bearing in mind prevention is always a better approach. Is there any consideration to putting fencing, wire meshing or whatever on the bridges to make it more difficult? I appreciate not all of the mental health issues are from bridges, but to make it less easy to do that, I would have thought be helpful.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. It's a very valid question. So we are undergoing across the southwest, across our in excess of 2,220 odd structures, we've assessed which ones are vulnerable. Now, what we can tell you is, first of all, you've got iconic structures. So people that are suffering psychological trauma, if they become into that what's normally a short-term suicidal state, one of the first things is to travel, or considerations is to travel to an iconic structure, hence such as the Clifton Suspension Bridge, the Avonmouth Bridge. So in the process of target hardening those locations, we work very closely with the NHS. We work very closely with the Samaritans, one of our partners. So on our structures on the Avonmouth Bridge and the Severn Bridge, we have free Samaritan direct telephone points at either end of the structure. We are currently in design to raising the parapets on that structure. The second reason we'll see is where one of our structures is easily accessible to an urban environment. So if the SRN severs a community, or you've got a community on either side of the bridge, so it says accessibility is the issue. So regionally across those 2,200 plus structures, we are in the process of identifying and designing and identifying funding to target what is a number of structures. The Somerset structures are on that list. They're not at the top of the list, and there isn't a specific pattern. There's many bridges, you're aware, between Bridgewater and the Taunton area. They are on the list, but they are other structures across the region out of those 2,200 which we need to target first. Yeah, and just the other note, and thank you, Johnny, just reminding me, on the majority of our structures across the strategic road network, when you cross them, you'll see the Samaritan signs as part of our partnership working with that organisation.
Yeah, thank you. I'm aware of that. I'm also aware that if a person has reached that point where they wish to end their life, it's very difficult to persuade them they don't. It's just the more obstacles that can be put in their way, the better it would be.
What I will say, Councillor, is any new structures we are building, so any new bridges over the road. So, for instance, we've just carried out a significant major project in Cornwall between Chiverton and Carland on the A30. The new structures there are now built with a raised parapet to 1.8 metres.
Thank you, Caroline. Fran Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation. I found it really interesting, and I think with a lot of the things that you're telling us is things that we probably are aware of, and all the issues of capacity and driving standards, etc. And we all know that. And I think a lot of the problems are we want to get from A to B as quick as we can, and we haven't got the patience to wait and realise that the impact on people who have been involved in these accidents is far more important than us getting from A to B in many cases. I think, do you have data, and many questions that I had in my head have been asked, and you've answered very well, thank you. Do you have data on driving standards within these accidents that are happening, road traffic collisions, or whatever we call them now? Driving standards, do we have data on lorries who are involved with is it the lorry's fault? Is it another driver's fault? Age and experience of drivers under the influence of drugs and alcohol and mental health issues. Do you go down as far as that when you're dealing with a road accident? Do you go down as far as those details? Because I'd like to know if that is impacting, or if there is a trend on that. And I think the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to make 3 recommendations coming out from this, because for me, I think we need, as a council, we need to lobby government for more funding for policing and or for mental health support. I think that's something that we could do as a council. And as part of the mental health support, I'd like us as a recommendation to the executive to see if there is any way that we can gain funding, work together further with our partners under adult social care to help with mental health issues within Somerset. And I know a lot of this is down to money. And the third thing is I think we would like to recommend to the executive that we investigate the road safety partnership for Somerset that you have said is happening in Devon and Cornwall. And I don't want us to reinvent the wheel, but to actually probably emulate what they're doing, because you have said it's very good. So I think if we could do something like that, I think that was something that could positively come out from this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. I'm just going to cover part of it, and then clearly I need to hand over to Andy around the data. And thank you for your recommendations that you made today. Importantly, I'm going to refer back to Vision Zero just a little bit around the analysis. They have an analytical team that target their interventions, so that allows Vision Zero to target the interventions. So chief causation in that area, I'm not going to be able to give you the percentages, are young drivers. Then it's motorcyclists, normally my age. I think it's a good idea to go and jump on 1000cc after not motorcycling for 30 years. And then older drivers. And obviously there's quite a large retirement community in the peninsula down there. And then you've got your drug, and then you've got your offending drivers. So you've got the fatal 5, including drugs, alcohol, speed, etc. That allows them to target those resources. That is why I really support your recommendation you just made, and I thank you for it. I'm going to pass over to Andy in relation to.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we do collect data from the scenes. I haven't got that with me, so I apologise for that. I'm sure that's something that we can sort of look to try and get to you at a later time. But yes, root causes for us are interested, because that allows us to then be proactive in that roads policing and in the campaigns that we do jointly. So yes, very good point. Yes, we do that, but I haven't got that with me.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I hope I'm going to be helpful. We've been told there's no golden bullet, which is obviously right, but we've got to improve things. I mean, Councillor Dingle quite helpfully brought up driver education, and he's quite right. A couple of the members of the highways talked about mid-lane hoggers, which actually made me smile, because when I took my test, which unbelievably is well over 50 years ago now, motorways were fairly new. There was a public information film on the telly, and I remember it quite clearly. There's 3 lanes to these newfangled motorways: the slow lane, the fast lane, and the overtaking lane. And when you decide how fast you're going to go, stay in that lane, because moving lanes is dangerous. That's what we were taught. That was 50 years ago. Times have moved on. If you see an old codger like me driving down the middle lane, he's doing what he was taught. So this is the thing. How can we improve driver education? Because 50 years ago is a long time. There's been no public information saying, hey, you've got to move out the middle lane now. It's obviously lacking. And this is actually a question for Richard and his team. How can the council get involved with driver education? Because surely that's something we can get involved in, and it's an important matter. It's something that clearly has got to be brought up to date 50 years too late.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. We do work with our partners in the police on driver education. We have a team in the council that are dedicated to that. what is interesting, I would say, is the development in new technology. For instance, we've worked with you on the AI camera on the 361 near Frome, and I'm just confused to why we don't have that across the M5 network to look at driver behaviour in the areas that we know that we have the problems, because enforcement really helps prevent bad behaviour. And there is a real feeling that I can bomb down the M5 at 90 miles an hour and know that I'm not going to get stopped. And I'm sure there's plenty of other people, and I'm sure you say that you do that trip every day, and I'm sure you probably think the same thing. So, yeah, obviously I always stick to 70, but on your bike, on my bicycle, but no. But no, in all seriousness, there is an issue with enforcement, I believe, and that is across. I think enforcement is a problem across everywhere in the southwest, and I put that down to our own council has issues with different types of enforcement, but that's clearly somewhere where we can work a lot better together. And I really think that we have to look at what technology we have, because it's there, and how we can apply that. I mean, talking on Henry's Railways again, they've recently started to use control room operated drones to look for people in difficulty, shall we say. And can that not be replicated, not exactly the same way, but on our stretch of the M5, we clearly need to do more. This is what I'm saying, is that we all understand, we all here understand the constraints that everybody is under, but actually we can do more, and we should be doing more.
Thank you both. Highway code has advanced in the last 50 years, and it has changed. And I think the government, they've got a role to play with that. I really do, as does the police and National Highways, in making sure that the correct, most up-to-date messaging is out there. So I think perhaps, I know there's social media. I'm not on social media. I avoid it. But I know there's stuff that I know Ian will speak about in a moment. Education is key. And I'll be honest, I think nationally, I think there's been too much reliance upon education and a little bit less on enforcement. And I think there is a part to play for enforcement. But there again, I'm from a policing of 30 odd years ago, but I do think that education, by setting the standards and making sure that the information is out there so people can adhere to it, is one thing, but there are some people that just will not. And from that, I believe enforcement is a factor. And I think nationally, that has been a problem, and roads policing have had a problem with the resourcing of that. And I generally say that is the case as a practitioner, and I think more is being done now, and I know that is a steer from the PCC, so there is an acceptance. But I agree that enforcement, there is a place for it, because there has to be a deterrent.
Appreciate that, Chair. If I could come back. Obviously the highway code has adapted over the time. But if you passed your driving test 50 years ago, you probably not aware of it. So, this needs to bring up forward. The only education I've had in the last 50 years, I was on a speed awareness course. Very excellent course, taught you a lot. Doesn't mention motorways at all. So, there is a big gap there which needs to be filled. And I'm asking, how can we fill it? Can we help? That's the question.
So thank you, Councillor. So speed awareness courses for offending on the motorway, such as speeding, would obviously cover the motorway section. So what do we do? The highway code has changed, and one of the pages of the highway code fairly early on will tell you, and at the end of your driving test, not just hold you back then, but you've got a responsibility to ensure that you keep up with legislation and the highway code rules. And it's lack of knowledge is not a defence, unfortunately. So what we do is we use strategic signing. So when I say strategic signing, let's be really plain. The message boards above the lanes on the motorway, we use to give safety messages when they're not being used for anything else. And they will say no middle lane hogging. To make it clear, lane 1 is your driving lane. Anything to the right of that are overtaking lanes. So that is in the highway code, and we do ask people not to drink and drive, not to take drugs and drive, not to middle lane hog, etc. Then to take a break, obviously specifically this time of year. Just going back to the use of technology and where that can help, and I'm gonna home back on. So as Richard, Councillor Wilkins, is I'm really interested in working with partners to develop the road safety partnership. The one that I have most experience with, we have paid for some equipment, which is AI equipment. And we know we all roll our eyes and get scared when we say AI. We need to be scared of this if you're an offending driver. It's mobile, it moves around Devon and Cornwall. And if you're using your mobile phone, if it's in your hand, it will catch you. If you don't have a seatbelt on, it will catch you. It is very, very impressive. It is checked by a human after offences are identified. We're not involved in enforcement because I said at the start of the meeting, we're not an enforcement agency, but we will pay for enforcement equipment. It's operated by some of our supply chain. That is shortly going to be able to identify middle lane hoggers. The AI can be tuned effectively as it develops to overcome these problems. And hopefully, if we successfully deliver a road safety partnership, once people know that kit is out there, they have seen levels of offending in Devon and Cornwall go like this. And I think it really, let's use technology. This is one of the solutions we're potentially looking for to make the M5 a safer and more resilient route through Somerset.
Can I add? I mean, thanks for the points raised by both the councillors. And I think, we're all saying a very similar thing. There is both a role for enforcement here as well as for education. We will build that with our policing colleagues in with our sort of road safety strategy for the region, but also invest in that regional partnership we're talking about and see what we can learn from both national and more local best practice or good practice. The use of tech, Police Digital Service is now up and running. It's looking to do stuff at scale, which gives, helps constabularies because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel 43 times. There is definitely scope. I know I can speak on behalf of the Police and Crime Commissioner. She will, through her scrutiny of the Chief Constable, very similar setting to what you find here, where we will hold to account in line with the Police and Crime Plan to make sure that both roads policing and collision investigation is appropriately resourced alongside other priorities, but it is appropriately resourced to do the job it needs to. And we look forward to working in partnership going forward to help build a better construct and structure for both road safety as well as managing incidents when they do occur. But thank you for your time this morning. It's been really helpful to air this in this forum.
Thank you, Rob. John at the back.
Thank you very much. Just following on from what the councillor over there was saying about lobbying government for extra funding. Do we have any numbers, or can we work towards understanding how much it costs our Somerset economy when the M5 starts, and the wider peninsula as well, Devon and so on? Because if we have that kind of economic data, we'd certainly have a lever to ask for more funding to sort that out. So I think that's something that we could look at creating is that number.
So the cost to UK PLC and regional PLCs when a section of the strategic road network is shut is a complex thing. And the reason it is complex, it depends on time of day and which section of road. Now, what I can tell you, I don't know if you recall I can quote a figure because it's in the public forum, that you'll remember, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, the M32 was shut for an extended period of time, going to central Bristol because there was riots. I think it's Just Stop Oil riots. And I was asked to go away and calculate a number for the cost to UK PLC. That number for that motorway at 2 o'clock in the afternoon was £250,000 an hour to UK PLC. So if you're going to Bristol Airport, you've missed your flights because that road is shut, yeah? Avonmouth Bridge, obviously, equally, got the Super Panamax ports. You've got, again, a route to Bristol Airport. You've got the main artery into the southwest. It will be a high cost. The section of M5 in Cornwall, sorry, in Somerset, I can't give you the figure. I don't have it. But what I can tell you is that 4 or 5 years ago, it was calculated at £250,000 an hour for the M32 at 2 o'clock on a nice sunny Tuesday in June. It can be done. It's a very complex thing to resolve, but I would suggest to you that it's hundreds of thousands of pounds per hour.
Thank you, Mike. It's going to be 30 seconds. That's it.
Thank you, Chair. As I guess we're wrapping up, I just wanted to thank everyone again for attending. We've heard a lot today about what is already being done, but again, it isn't working. And I leave here very little the wiser about what anyone is going to do to reduce the increase in the number and length of closures. So on that basis, Chair, I wonder if, and it's not for me to make a recommendation, not being a member of your committee, but I wondered if we couldn't agree perhaps that we set up a team between the Council, National Highways and the police to gather the data, to analyse it and to produce an improvement plan. And then we can talk to government about how we fund the improvement plan. But at the moment, we'd be talking to the government, but we'd be saying, can we have some more money, please? What for? Don't really know. We need that improvement plan. We need to know what's causing the issues, what we can realistically do to fix them. And I think unless we set up that sort of an informal team between the three parties, we're never going to get any money to do anything.
Thank you, Mike. Right, there are no more questions from the committee. I just want to highlight two things, and I'm then going to ask Fran Smith to put her recommendations forward again, and I'm going to add to them. The first thing I want to say is that on the computer learning, I refuse to call it AI because there's no intelligence involved. The top 3 accident black spots for the UK are the M25, the M32 and the M5 south of the bridges at Bristol. They are 2.2 accidents per kilometre of motorway, and they are the heaviest accidents that there are. There are one thing I want to ask about: can we, on the overhead things, put up, because I've seen them on the M25, accident black spots? So this is an accident black spot. When it's not showing that the turning or whatever is not a problem. And to answer your question, that is the first fact that we need to get to the government, that they widened the M25 by 2 lanes at enormous expense, and the accidents are no worse, no better than they are on the M32 or the M5. I'm now going to answer Andy Dingwall's question about the suicides before I go any further. They are an absolute mess to clear up. There are bits of body everywhere. I've been involved twice. The overhead bridges on the railways, almost all of them have anti-suicide netting on them, and they are, sorry to say, very nearly ineffective if somebody is determined that they're going to kill themselves. I would also like to say that there is a system in place on the railways where a standby railway engine driver is brought in immediately to replace the driver of the vehicle, because that driver is in a really bad mental place because he's had the body scattered all over his windscreen. And this is the sort of thing I'm trying to get at about changing policies so that we can actually meet the worst cases of what actually happens, if that makes sense. I fully accept that when a train is jumped in front of, there's only one vehicle involved, but every bit of the railway has to be scarred for bits in the same way as you have to clean up all the cars. And that's one of the jobs that I've had to do in the past. I get it, but I also saying that it's 6 times less suicides on roads to what there is on the railway, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll deal with your. I think my colleague has already dealt with your second question, and Andy. Just deal with the first one. First of all, we would never use the term that you've used to identify a hotspot on an overhead sign. So the term that we would more likely use is a cluster site or hotspot. With regards to our strategic signing, we have a set and regularly reviewed set of agreed wording that can fit on that signage, number of pixels that we've got. That is regularly reviewed. We have specific campaigns, and it is reviewed to maximise the safety of any stretch of road and the efficiency of any stretch of road. So there is a set agenda or menu. A menu of what can be put on those signs agreed with the Department for Transport, and it is regularly reviewed, altered and updated. We would not use the term black spot, but I'm going to rely on my colleagues that are involved in reviewing that with the DFT.
That surely should be open to discussion in the way Mike Rigby has described.
Yeah, it's an internal conversation that we can have following this meeting, but yeah, it's very, very closely considered and very regularly reviewed. We have to be very, very careful what is written on those signs, and it's got to be very compliant with DFT policy.
Fran, could you please go through your recommendations again, please?
Thank you, Chair. I would like, I said lobby government for more funding for policing. I guess the best way would be for our leader of the council to write to government for more funding to support policing and mental health support due to the issues that are raised, that are coming out from our motorway and the impact on our county. So I'm sure officers can put that in better English than me. That we also internally look at whether we can support any additional funding or what we can do within our adult social care to provide more support for mental health within Somerset. That's for that. And the second and the third one was to set up a road safety partnership for Somerset without reinventing the wheel. So basing ourselves on the existing one that is in Devon and Cornwall, as recommended by people from the from highways.
Thank you for that. I would also like to add what Mike Rigby has suggested, that we form a team to look at how we minimise the closures that are occurring on the motorways due to the high accident rate we have on these motorways.
Happy to second that.
Yes, Marcus, you want to come in?
You're going to second both of those.
Are you all seconding? Right. Has anybody else got anything they want to add on this subject? I've got a proposer and a seconder for those recommendations. Can I have a vote, please? All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for turning up. We need to take this further. Right. I am now going to completely change the agenda. There will be a 10-minute break next. We are losing completely the local climate and nature partnership update. And we will be going straight on to Somerset Flood Resilient Programme when we have finished our 10-minute break. any questions that anybody wants to know. The other thing is we're combining number 5 with number 11 at the end, so that we're not doing 2 separate agenda items.
It was under the its predecessor scrutiny. We had asked for additional special circumstances to proceed on this because of the confidential nature of this grant and these confidentiality clauses that we had in place from DEFRA until such time where they were comfortable that we could actually talk more openly about it. So there was a decision made back in April, and then obviously when the press releases went out from DEFRA office and central government, all the members were provided with a member update, and since then there's been that open dialogue as well with local communities. The funding is for 2 years. It needs to be spent within 2 years unless we have special circumstances to extend particular projects, but we would need to seek advice from DEFRA on whether we could actually extend that, but it's quite clear that it is 2 years. Because obviously about the confidentiality period between obviously April and where we are now, we have got I think agreement with DEFRA that we can restart the clock from once we have actually put the plan through our executive, and obviously the DEFRA have signed it off. So we're aiming for a September time to actually restart the clock. Somerset Council are the host authority, but the key aspects around the MOU is about collaboration and partnership working with Somerset River Authority and the risk management authorities, of which I'm lucky to actually be able to say Piers from the Environment Agency has been seconded in to lead the programme over the next 2 years, working with Somerset Council. So the additional resource and his knowledge and expertise is very welcome. The funding is 42.5 million for capital, 7.5 million for revenue, and ultimately it is to go towards flood resilience programs. So rural flood resilience programs, but if you're talking about rural to the London teams, is pretty much Somerset. So it is Somerset wide. That's what we're looking at, and it's to deal with flooding. So flooding, and there's various different forms, from river flooding to surface water flooding. So this could go towards a number of areas, including coastal flooding, but not coastal risk. We need oven-ready projects, and there are aspects of the Green Book business case that we need to be able to demonstrate. So the benefit cost ratios, that is to look at a programme scale rather than individual projects as you normally would do when you're bidding for actual money. So the agreement is between DEFRA and Somerset Council. There was a joint press release, and we need to ensure that we have got that agreed plan between those two bodies as well. So just moving on. Sorry. There we go. So governance, we're working at pace with the governance team at the moment to try and see how we can align, obviously, with the current executive, whether that will be similar to how the Somerset River Authority agrees its annual works, whether that is a programme base or there is a need for a subcommittee using one of the current subcommittees of the executive for that agreement, or a different one. We obviously have our internal governance routes using scrutiny, such as today's committee, to actually take papers through to executive. So there will be a more detailed plan. It'll probably be next month now, being able to come back to executive back to scrutiny and then to executive. And then we have a programme advisory board, which is going to be made up of members like the risk management authorities, Somerset River Authority and others. And I'll go on to an example of what that could look like, because I need that agreed by my executive team. And then there will be a number of programme and project teams which sit underneath. So an example of what we're looking at the moment, and when I say we, the officers, these are some of the recommendations, ideas that we have in terms of the governance, is to look at an advisory board made up of the individuals here. So we have 3 executive members, including the leader, Somerset River Authority, Internal Drainage Board, obviously that's the chairs, Wessex Water, Environment Agency, Natural England, an MP rep, and ideally what we're trying to look at as well, working with our localities, is having a community voice in there as well. This is an advisory board, it's not a voting board, because the decision of what this plan finally is sits with the executive. So again, some of the initial thoughts I've had and listening to the communities and understanding the complex natures of Somerset's landscapes, what we've tried to do is to look at thematic areas. So 3 in particular, one around the demands of our local communities, wanting to understand what happened in January and February, being able to tackle some of the complex questions around why areas did flood, trying to capture a Section 19 sort of methodology to that report, but without actually going into the detail of a Section 19, because it was quite a sporadic area. There was no areas which was hitting the 10 properties, apart from Bathpool actually, which warranted a Section 19. So we felt because of the landscape and the scale of it, we needed to try and answer those questions. And we're also going to be working with our Environment Agency colleagues to tackle some of the areas around trigger points, the discussions on permanent versus temporary pumps, and include that within that report. So that's very, very close. Nicola Dawson is leading on that particular piece of work, and that should be ready for publication soon. Other areas is looking at implementing measures to reduce flood risk. So traditional methods around hard engineering, assets and river management and maintenance, nature-based solutions. So looking at the alternatives going forward. A lot of it can be delivered now, but there's a lot of learning in this because of the discussions about the scalability needed to make these, make sure that they are impactful. But also another area, as you've heard today from just a number of communities, there's a huge amount of desire and demand out there for support. So we really want to try and look at my community's focused area, which is looking at flood reviews and plans in a different way, and I'll be able to tell you a bit more about that. Looking at more evidence-based approach in terms of innovation and intelligence, looking at climate, nature and water, so we are more informed across those areas, as well as an educational piece and in community engagement, broader piece around resilience and adaptation. So again, these are ideas, these are not plans that we are taking forward, but these are some of the suggestions which have come forward. So as you can see, in terms of hard engineering and river maintenance, we know that we have plans in place around Taunton flood strategies. We know that TTC 5, TTC 10 and Long Run Meadow are areas that we do need to deliver to meet the needs of Taunton. An area that we're trying to work on here is how can we utilise the funds we currently have now, but also the 50 million to try and accelerate TTC 5 to be delivered in 2 years, but also the planning, the assessment needs to be able to get Long Run Meadow to a stage that we can start drawing in further funding for regeneration and development and look towards the next 2 to 5 years for that as a delivery programme. Chard, we have flood studies. We know that Chard is a priority area when it floods. One of our tallest hillside communities seems to be impacted a lot, and there is solutions that we have. We want to be able to get in quickly to meet with the new clerk who is starting this week and try and see what we can deliver in those 2 years. There are some actions which might go past those 2 years, but we need to be able to make a start there. There's been conversations around temporary pumps and generators. Could they be owned and purchased and stored locally? So it takes away the demand from the national assets team. I think there's discussions there with risk management authorities about who would own them, who would maintain them. And then obviously there is an ongoing revenue cost, which would need to be picked up. So idea at this moment in time, a lot of work that we need to do to overcome that. But one area which has come across strong from multiple risk management authorities is the Tone Parrot confluence. And also there's been discussions around downstream to the Parrot, so from motorway to Northmoor in terms of dredging there. That one's a bit more challenging because of the assessment needs which would need to be supported there, and also can it be delivered in those 2 years. So that could be, if it's agreed, a project that we tried to look for for an extension because of the complexities around timescales. There's also other discussions around the low spots in the bank and in the brew, as well as there's conversations around Donyat as well, if that is an area that could be looked at in terms of conveyance. There are others. I know the IDB at the moment have been meeting this week. Chairs are rapidly trying to speak with their boards to come up with ideas and look at what can be delivered in the 2 years. So I'm already expecting a lot more to be coming in this week and to be looked at by the team. In terms of nature-based solutions, one of the actions that we've been looking at for a while now, actually anyway, is actually can we create an NFM, a natural flood management forum of some kind. Now it could sit under one of the bodies that we've got, like Somerset River Authority, Catchment Partnership, but there is a need with an increasing use of natural flood management and nature-based solutions to try and coordinate what is going in, treat them like assets, ensure that they are mapped and they are going into the intelligence that we are hoping to gather. Is also with increased funding coming forward from national schemes that we could use that body to be able to write the applications, not deliver in terms of risk management authorities, but use the organisations like FWAG, like Somerset Wildlife Trust, WWT, and parishes and towns to do the deliveries within our communities and at the scale that we need. So there's a real opportunity that we can do, we can look at there. The nature markets work stream, which I was going to present today, but in some ways it was quite useful that it's going back because there'll be some additional learning. There's a proof of concept that we're looking at with some of the business as usual work, where it could actually help look at funding options outside of traditional public sector into blended finance routes, of seeing how the private investment opportunities can come into resilience credits, but also resilience measures. There's some conversations around reviewing water and nature regulations and autonomy as the work stream that they're saying. So it's about how can we start aligning some of those work streams and the governance around that better. And there is some scalable natural flood management that we're looking at with Wessex Water, Somerset River Trust around the Taunton area, but there's 12 parishes there that they're trying to look at, which is all part of that integrated water management plan that we've been looking at, linked in with TTC5 Long Run Meadow. So Taunton has got a lot of plans in place, and it might feel that there's a bias, but we've got oven ready things that we can get going on in that particular area. Blackdown Hills, there's an NFM as well as other outcomes that we could be involved in with a simple £12,500 contribution, and there is opportunities to review around coastal realignment. Locations are confidential at the moment because those communities, there needs to be engagement conversations, but there's a potential national case study option there to look at how nature-based solutions could actually support coastal flooding and look at coastal realignment with a programme there. So trying to bring in the coastal learning is an important part of this as part of the Somerset landscapes. And then another area is the water level management plans. There's a lot of data and intelligence that we could take from that for our IDB, EA and Natural England's colleagues. So updating that, I think it's been a number of years since that's been updated. So that seems to be a quick win. Communities. This has been my inbox. Has become very, very popular over the last 2-3 weeks, and communities literally have been flooding into the inbox with requests for support. These are just a few, and if they were here, they would be able to see that their communities are highlighted in these boxes. These are the communities which are reaching out. Some of them have got plans. Some of them haven't, but just need support because the historic flooding natures either of Section 19s or we've had some sporadic ones. Glastonbury, we've just seen more recently with the impacts from recent floods over the last couple of months. So these are not a definitive list, but these are just some of the ones that we need to assess and look at what communities could go into the 30 hotspots, which ones are the priorities that we need to go to. And no doubt there's members around this room who will be trying to add to this list here that we've got as well. With the communities, they all have their unique needs. They all have bespoke measures that we need to look at in terms of action. So one of the areas around the communities, we want to be able to create an action pot that goes with these hotspots. So there could be a sizable amount of money that we actually follow a flow diagram. And in the future, this could be the future where we do Section 19s, because it's always been a desk-based exercise and then presented to communities. We've not really had that engagement. So what we're proposing here is still doing the desk-based exercises, really reviewing the assets, and that's across both Somerset Council, IDB, EA, in that area, providing a profile. So this is an early one that we've tried to sort of look at the moment with Rewishton. Provide the intelligence to that community so they have the knowledge base of what that health check is in terms of the assets in that area, EA flood plans, historic data around Section 19s, but then we go and engage with that community, whether that is a parish council, flood warden meetings, or it could be a wider community meeting. So we're looking for, well, we're not looking, we're listening first of all. We're actually understanding what are the issues on the ground. They can ground truth what we've put in that desk-based exercise and go, yeah, you've got it, or no, James, actually, these are the issues that we're seeing year on year in terms of flooding. So just even speaking with Rewishton, this exercise where we brought in the parish council, we highlighted the assets in this area. Pump House is a particular area. They were actually saying, well, it could do with an upgrade, and if it moved to the recreation ground actually area, it would be easier to access. It's off the road. So you're starting to create community and RMA solutions, a shared action plan, because at the end of this, once we've done an additional desk exercise and presented it back to the community, the outcome is a shared plan. It's about having money that we can get on and actually deliver some of the actions which are achievable within the 2 years, whether that is about delivering on assets, whether that is floodgates, whether that is resilience measures or natural and nature-based solutions. But there is a plan then that will sit with the community and with the risk management authorities, which will go longer than the 2 years. It might be that some actions are not achievable in those 2 years, and we still need to commit to that, work with those communities and find the money through other means. But we are hoping that there are a large number of the actions that we can get on and deliver, either using commissioners or granting the community directly and they do the procurement, or using the frameworks that we've got available to us within Somerset Council and the Environment Agency. So we've mentioned a lot about the communities. That's a key focus for this, is about supporting the communities where people live and work. But there are other aspects that we're looking at as well. Can we support around property flood resilience? Looking at the Section 19s, it could be, like Rewishton and highlighted, a number of houses which could be supported in that particular area around property flood resilience. Looking at how we can support communities with self-help guides, so flood smart living, personal evacuation plans, community resilience plans, early warning apps, even resilience work that we're trying to do with public health at the moment is how can we overlap all of this so that people, when they do flood, and we're not going to be able to stop flooding with £50 million, we've got that education, that resilience embedded, that it's less impactful on those communities and individuals. Some of the funding will need to go on to staffing. I'm trying to look at how graduates could support in a number of areas around marketing and design, data and intelligence, community and engagement, project management, etc. And actually, like we've done with peers with the Environment Agency, are there other risk management authorities or advisors like from FWAG who could support us with land engagement management, etc. as well. So that's something that we're trying to do at pace, because I'm grateful to have peers. It's been me for the last month, but it's been quite challenging to try and move us forward. Other areas around preparedness is around emergency planning. Could we actually deliver community preparedness kits for each of our communities? Can we actually look at more education, like Flood Mary exhibition, education trailers, so when we're out there engaging with communities, we can showcase some of the opportunities. And one suggestion come through from, I think Nicola Dawson, was around satellite phones. So when we're in the middle of those emergency events, that we have better communications to be able to share what information is on the ground. I'm nearly there, Chair, sorry. Partnerships, community voice and collaboration is something that we need to improve on. We need to see how we can use the current forums like community networks, flood wardens to maximise impact on what we're actually doing, be able to act like scrutinies, but also support us in terms of how we evolve these plans. We are trying to create that place-based approach with the community work stream, and I think the code delivery of plans helps to really capture that community voice. We know that we need to improve correspondence with MPs and with our councillors. And then there's also further conversations around flood conferences in the future. Can we scale up on those areas, as well as continuing the community of practice work with public health and the partners there? One of the key things that we really want to get from this in the 2 years is a shift in cultural changes between risk management authorities. Actually, we're so busy doing what we do currently that at times is really hard to share that learning, share what we're doing. So we're trying to create a more collaborative shared approach and resource past the 2 years. Digital innovation is a huge area that we need to be better on. Our digital intelligence, we need to make sure that we've got that intelligence to hand across nature, climate and water, especially when some of the solutions for areas like the water environment is the actual nature environment. So being able to see the cross benefits, the stackable benefits around nature markets, nature-based solutions, local nature recovery strategy, as well as historic data that we have around our flood events will help us be more informed and strategic in the future, as well as supporting us to be prepared in terms of improving our telemetry and water intelligence there. We're trying to work with our highways colleagues about a network of floodgates and automated signage. It'd be a lot easier for the team to be able to push buttons from Central County Hall rather than trying to get vans out to close down roads in the middle of emergencies. It's understanding whether there is a need there in the particular communities and how easy it is to be able to do that, especially with electrification and being able to hook up. And then also, can we look at event case management systems? One area we're also looking at is asset registers. Can we look at asset management software which actually pulls the EA, Somerset Council, IDB together so we have a Somerset integrated approach? Final slide. So next steps very much around community communications and engagement. There's ongoing conversations, obviously, with the risk management authorities, the advisory board over the next 2 weeks, well, every 2 weeks going forward to executive on the 24th. We need to get information out to our communities. We need to try and start bringing together what this draft plan is going to be, but utilising new AI sort of generated website devices like ArcGIS programs, which can actually showcase what that plan is, what the KPIs are associated to that, and how we're actually delivering on these. Governance is something which is tricky, but we're working at pace to try and deliver. So we have a confirmed governance pathway, we have delegated authorities, or I know who I need to go to get sign off at various different points, and then ensuring that the risk management authorities feel they have all had a voice, they've all been able to influence this plan, even if at times the Somerset Council at the end may need to make the difficult final decisions. So the plan will hopefully be in place by September, and we will then need to report back to DEFRA every 6 months on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, James. I've got, Tom, your hands up, and I've got 2 in the room at the moment, 3 in the room, 4 in the room now, 5 in the room now. I'm just going to ask 2 questions. On the Taunton schemes, they have already got SIL allocated for some of it.
Yes, that's correct. So TTC5 as at this moment in time there is funds which is associated to that programme, so seal money. What I have proposed is whether we can bench that seal money for Long Run Meadow. It's the bigger, more strategic scheme and going to be the more expensive. Having a pump prime fund, but once we've got planning permission and once we have got the assessments and detailed design in place, having the money would be able to us to draw in additional funding at a greater pace. So I was proposing the money which is set for TTC5, we actually ring fence for Long Run Meadow, and we use part of this funding to finance TTC5 and get it going at pace.
You talked to riparian ownership. How are the EA going to enforce that riparian ownership in this scheme?
Thanks, Chair. So yeah, Piers Hooper, substantively flood and coastal risk operations manager for Somerset at the Environment Agency, but currently on secondment to the Council as strategic manager for this programme. Can I just clarify in terms of enforcing riparian ownership, Chair? What do you mean exactly?
I have a farmer who has a bank which is covered in trees that are going into a river. I'm not going to give you the river because if I did, it would be obvious who the farmer was. And he said to me, I quote, "I'm not going to clear the banks unless the EA sends me a letter." So I asked the manager concerned, and I was told there was no enforcement officers available to do it.
Okay, yeah. So so I mean, it is incredibly resource intensive to do that. Resourcing for that is a challenge at the moment, but it's something that the Environment Agency are continuing to look at and to work on, because I think we recognise that we need to have that facility, and it's something that we could potentially look at actually through this programme. If there are gaps in what's provided at the minute, we do need to change that culture, I think, that's out there in terms of what people are doing at riparian level. So I think that's something we could potentially look at doing through this programme, albeit obviously we'd have to consider how do we make sure that's sustainable going forward after 2 years' time. But yeah, I mean, it is an issue, absolutely.
Thank you. Right, my first person is Alan Bradford, then I've got Fran Smith, then Marcus, was it? Yes, and David, and you, Rob, too. Right, Alan. Andy, sorry as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first thing the council wants to do is throw these away and buy something sensible we can sit back, speak into without looking at people. I've heard a lot of debate this morning, and I'm struggling. My ears are pretty good. I've just had them tested, and I am struggling to pick up some of the debate that's been going on. I really, really am. All right, just get rid of these. Add something like you got. It might be a lot of sense. Okay, take a bit. That's the first. That's firstly, James. You must want to drink after all that. I do like the idea about Taunton, the seal payments. I was involved in the one with the bridge, with the Bridgewater barrier when it first started off, and that's been financed a lot by seal payments. And in view of the fact there's a lot of development going on at Taunton, a lot more probably than anywhere else at present in big developments, it's going to make a lot of difference. In fact, if you don't get so much water coming down the River Tone from Taunton, we don't get no problems at Moorland and Foregate, because that is the problem for Moorland and Foregate. You all know that. It's nothing to do with North Petherton. That's the first thing I'm going to state, right? Lived there for 79 years, and I know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? The problems at Moorland and Foregate are brought about by the overspill at Baltimore Wall from Currymore, then it floods Northmore, then they've opened up at the pumps, then it Foregate to take the surplus water coming off them two areas. If that area is improved in A, you won't get the problems in B. There is a few streams coming in from North Petherton that if they were improved a little bit, and Elson's Clyce in particular has probably been mentioned, I suspect. In fact, I go to bed at night thinking about Elson's Clyce. All they keep on about those areas, Elson's Clyce. They're all moaning at Foregate and Moorland, but nobody got wet feet this time. Nobody got wet feet at all because it was organised when the pumps were brought in and everything was right. I'm not going to say too much now because my brother is chairman of the drainage board, which I haven't mentioned too much about the drainage boards this morning. And I do believe we've got meetings coming up to highlight some of the issues. But I do think it's important that people understand that the problems at Moreland and Foregate are told with the two rivers meeting at the Parrot and the Tone, they overspill to there. So if you can stop that coming down from Taunton, your Long Run Meadow, etc., and get the sill payments working, you're going to alleviate an awful lot of issues. That's what I think. I'm not an expert, but I'm not a fool. Thank you very much. Okay.
Do you want to reply to that, James, or are you the diatribe all right?
No, I was just going to say, I mentioned a couple of times, probably the microphone, about the IDB, needing to listen to them, and they're working at pace at the moment to try and come up with some more ideas to come into this. So, yeah, completely need to listen to the boards.
Who's going to make it political?
I see a lot of people from certain areas here this morning, and I could have brought a lot of people in from my area. You know what I'm saying?
That's not political. That's me doing my local work. Fran Smith, please.
Thank you. I'll start this really. I'm concerned about the timescale. I don't think it's very long to be able to put everything together. If it started in April, we're all ready July, time we've gone through all the stuff that we take to organise things, even to get people in place, you know, it could take I don't know if you can second with less than a month or 3 months. So I am concerned about and we've been given some money, and if I've been given some money, I'll expend it. So, you know, if we can go for the things that we can actually use the money on first, that would be helpful. I don't know if it'll take too long. I don't know how I've missed this, but I thought Long Run Meadow was completed. I didn't know there was more work to be done on Long Run Meadow, but that I'm not that close to flooding issue. You know, that's not been something that I've been involved with too much in the recent years. Are we able to look at have we done work on all of our coastal areas to see if there's anything that could be easily supported or stopped from running into the sea? I was going to mention, you have kind of said working with the communities, gully clearing. I mean, we do gully clearing, but if I remember the past couple of years, we're doing less because we haven't got the funding for it. So can this money be used for us to increase, instead of doing it every other year, or every 3 years, you know, every, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, or every year? And you did talk about equipment for different communities. I've put down sandbags, but I know there is a more modern, different type of thing that we can provide to hold back for a few hours some of the funding for some of the flooding. And can we have that in areas? However, councils can often be accused of suddenly going out and spending, I don't know, £7,000 on a load of things that actually were redundant within a year or so. So we have to be careful, but then the investigation into finding this stuff takes time, and that's where I'm concerned that we end up losing time. So oven ready, I guess, is best. And the last, I said that I'm really concerned about timescale and your ability, not your ability, but the ability to be able to spend this funding.
Yeah, I've got a number of points there. Yeah, completely understand your views around the timescales. I think if we were going for April to April, I definitely would be concerned because we're 6 months in. I think it's hard to try and go through the governance work streams to get September. So if you're thinking going through scrutiny and then obviously to get papers, I'm looking at the 14th of August. So this is why we're trying to work at pace in the background and to a certain extent try and find that blended approach of looking at what that detail of these projects could look like, but still being open to listen to the other partners and communities so that we can try and get the best laid plan. There is going to be situations where people are happy with this plan, and there's going to be a lot of people who are probably going to be unhappy with elements of this plan. But I think I need to take this one on the chin and really get it across the line for September, because the most important thing is whatever we commit to, we deliver. So that's the key bit for me, is delivering at pace and making a difference in those communities, but also, when we say communities, that is the levels and moors, that is the upper catchment areas as well. So we've got to look at this blended approach and try and achieve as much as we possibly can, and make this 50 million in some areas, which I've highlighted today, is growing it. So it's actually seeing if we can match funds, look at nature markets as well as another example. So 50 million becomes 75 million or 100 million, as well as set the foundations for future. Long Run Meadow isn't. Long Run Meadow is there as a nature space at this moment in time, and we've got friends of Long Run Meadow which are very passionate about it being a local nature reserve long term. And it kind of is already. What I'm trying to do is to look at the flooding solutions, but look at those nature-based solutions as well. So there are opportunities that we can get the stackable benefits around nature as well as flooding mitigation here, and design it in such a way that the routes that we look at. So if you look at the, clouds, basically the Copenhagen models, where you're looking at cloudburst methodology, they've looked at their open spaces as water capture areas, but high walkways to be able to still go to community. So there's a way that we can keep the benefits of the nature reserve, that open space, but also during flood times be able to use it as a water capture attenuation. So that's
my understanding. Was Long Run Meadow was for flooding. We've made it nature and we've made it lovely and it's a great place to be, but initially it was to save flooding, throughout the town. And have we moved away from that?
No, I don't think that the design and build has really been there, because if you can see, it overspills into the play park and some of the communities at this moment in time. So part of the studies that they've been looking at is around TTT5 is the bridge pretty much to Long Run Meadow. You've got Long Run Meadow, which is that green space and needs the landscaping really and the hard engineering. So there's a blended approach which is needed there. It's quite a complex, there's a reservoir you're going to be pretty much building, so that we've still got that safe ability to capture water and continue as business as usual. And then TTC 10 is the bridge down to Firepole. So there's 3 key points of the Tone improvement programme. Other areas, the coastal, we can look at coastal flood risk, and that is one of the areas that we are trying to look at that example. There is work streams that we're doing in business as usual outside of this, which is looking at coastal risk. So there are 4 particular hotspots that we know around coastal risk, and we've got multi-service officers looking at the coastal risk and what funding we can look at for that as well. So that is another work stream, and no doubt that'll be something I'll bring to scrutiny at a later date. But coastal risk is something that we're looking at. Nature-based solutions, there are things like SUDS and cleaning of assets. I know with Minehead as an example, we have a plan for Minehead, and we might be able to actually deploy some of the resources as part of that towards that. Communities in terms of gullies and assets, that is part of that desk space exercise. And actually, when we found out when we're going back to communities, it is our assets. It's the IDB's assets, it's the EA's assets, which is part of that solution. So it's part of that action plan, and that funding can go towards that. And the last one there was around resilience measures. That's going to be an important thing about supporting our communities to be more resilient long term.
Thank you, Ran. Marcus Gravis, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, a bit like earlier, I don't know where to start, really.
Make it short.
Well, probably it is quite a big topic, Chair, and that's, I mean, obviously, and I'm not quite as good at getting it across as quickly as James can. So, I mean, I suppose, first thing to say, when it comes to flooding, particularly when you start talking about coastal flooding, £50 million isn't a lot of money. And actually, what's worse is the government can make a big deal. DEFRA can make a big deal out of it being £50 million, but 10 years ago it only had to be 20, I would have thought. And that's something we need to bear in mind. But it's how it was noticeable with the communities that you listed on there. Is some parish councils are more vociferous than others, maybe have a bit more time, maybe have certain topics they like particularly, and that fits into it. But I could mention other parish councils in my division that actually I've had meetings about flooding, and we talk about riparian responsibility, and we talk about that, but actually they're sat there saying, well, we can't get highways, say, to clear out underneath the little bridges that are on our stream? And how do we do that? And how do we get into that into a maintenance schedule? But then shouldn't that be budgeted for anyway? So actually, are we then going to start picking away at this £50 million for things that we should have been doing anyway and should be budgeted for anyway, but we haven't got any resources? So so I suppose the question is, and of course we've got quite a good flood and coastal team? Is it? Yeah. And how does this £50 million all fit into what you're already doing, I suppose? That's, I think, how do we make sure that it's extra money, but then is it extra money because we haven't got the money anyway to do what we wanted to do? So it's sort of a question around that. And I think it was interesting that we had so many people from one neck of the woods. Well played, I suppose. And at least you got the message out there. But of course, we'll all start chipping in. And you talk about Minehead. Well, let's be honest, that's quite a big community. Minehead, I declare an interest as someone who's actually watched the sea go through his premises. It might be 30 odd years ago. So that's quite a big community. That's quite a big economic impact, protection of that in the long term with sea level rise. So it's how, it gets down to, Alan, actually, that everything is political when it boils down to it. How do we balance those pulls from all sorts of things? And I have great faith in the team, and I appreciate how difficult a job you have. But I think I'll probably ask the question is what, Long Run Meadow, which I think, did we just say we're going to turn it into a reservoir? That sounds quite interesting. But how do we, I thought from my previous time at SWAT that was sort of funded, but maybe I'm just mistaken. So there you go.
The reservoir is only in flood period. So it's not a permanent one. Please don't get that one out there. In terms of your communities, just to start highlight, Minehead Watch at LCN. I'm meeting with them next week, and no doubt some of the requests of support will come forward, especially where we've got plans in there already. So there are things that we are trying to look within business as usual as part of the Flood and Coastal Service, as well as how can we utilise some of this money that we've got to target some of the flood alleviation and nature-based solutions in that area. In terms of, I guess, the question around extra, there is limited resources within Somerset Council. There's limited resources within IDB and Environment Agency as well. What we're trying to do with this is to look at place-based. So it's trying to look at what the community might need to be able to alleviate the problems. Now, some of that could be highways, or it could be flood and coastal assets or Environment Agency. I think what we're trying to do is be able to create a fund here which is delivering at pace, because to be able to look at prioritization of business as usual, that's where the complex nature of our work programs come. So if I'm talking from my flood and coastal service point of view, I have one engineer at this moment in time, and actually when we're looking at coastal risk and we're looking at key strategic assets, that's a lot of work for one engineer, a service manager, and then the variety. It's not a huge team, but what they're trying to do is deliver at pace across multiple work streams and work with partners. This is a unique opportunity where we can look at place-based options really, and be able to try and cut through some of the red tape to actually get things done. Now there are red tape areas. Environmental assessments is one of those areas that we need to work with Natural England and other bodies to try and deliver at pace. But that could be part of the resourcing, which we would say, well, that's just a business as usual option. We might be able to resource this programme to fast track some of these things. So it could be like highways with Gully, and actually, is there an option where a team could be brought in to prioritise some of these areas, whereas actually when you look at our schedules of work, it could be a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, depending on what that current demand is. So I think what I'm trying to look at with the evidence-based approach in communities is what evidence have we had around Section 19's flood event. You're not going to necessarily be targeting communities which has been bone dry for 20 years. We understand the communities, and some of the ones on those lists are ones which have been impacted over the last 10 years. There are others which are missing as well. And part of what we need to do and sit down is go, what is the priority list of those communities, and how can we get out to them as quickly as possible within this 2 years, but also continue this approach past the 2 years, because I think there is a plan on a page where past 2 years that could become the new norm of engagement with our communities around flooding. So I think there's a lot of learning that we will take through the 2 years as well, but we are trying to pull this together at pace and try and get deliver what we think is right for our communities.
Thank you. Dave Marcel.
All right, thank you. I might jump around a little bit. I've got a few points I'd like to put over. Thank you. It sounds, I'm encouraged by what I see. Is it possible to have a copy of the slides, or even a sort of updated version if you feel needs? I knew you words of caution on some of them, which we would have noted, but you might not pick up if you just saw the slides. But it would be helpful to have that. And yeah, my first impression, and of course we've only just seen it, but I like the sound of a fair bit, a lot of what was being said there in terms of the plan. There's been mention already of sort of overlapping with projects already funded by SIL. It does occur to me, and I'm sure to others as well, that there is lots of sort of flood projects underway already, not least funded through the SRA, which is doing many good things. Clearly, trying to understand that and get the best out of them, and it seems important. And some of those ones, I'm sure, need a bit more money, and this could be it. But there's already some money behind some of these projects. In terms of involving people, highways and FRAG were mentioned, and I probably don't really need to say why, especially FRAG. It's good to involve them, because farmers are a key part, and they do seem a good way in. From what I've seen, and certainly in our area, highways managers are really important. Certainly in our area, they've got lots of knowledge because often the flooding ends up with problems on the road, and so I think that's really important. The area highway managers, you have good contact with them, and I'm amazed at how much I find out from them, and I suspect you may be as well, because often it's not known elsewhere within the council from what I see. Okay. I want to say a little bit sort of about nature and engineering solutions, and yeah, okay with both. I sort of give a little bit of my feeling here, and I should mention as well the division I represent is Upper Tone, and it gives the name does give a clue. So I think there's even Upper Tone as well beyond, but we're in the hills north of Wellington and to Taunton. So we're a lot of the water is coming through the area. Now, what I sort of see there is runoff is a big issue. That we've got. It's often runoff from fields coming onto the roads. People then often also identify the drains, and they are an issue as well. And in place, the drainage system isn't what it needs to be. So, sort of having said that, I have a concern that big engineering solutions can just suck all the money in, and we've seen that happen before. And 50 million actually isn't that much, which has also been said. And if we go for the biggest engineering solutions, I think it could soon take all the money. You won't be surprised that I do think there's lots of good potential in natural flood management. So very keen on that. I suspect though maybe also small engineering solutions like sorting out the drains. Sometimes you come across flooding's caused because the water's course has got to go through a drain which is just too narrow, and it just always blocks up and starts causing flooding behind it. So that suggests that there could be an engineering but smaller scale needed. Okay, now sort of connected to this, you've mentioned Section 19 reports, which come in when, you know, property, especially homes, start getting flooded. And in my area, we have a bit of that, but really, actually, what we have more of is flooding of the roads, and sometimes lots of roads. You know, I do remember one occasion when I had to nearly drive all the way around Wellington to find a road that wasn't flooded. You know, it was literally about the fourth or fifth one before I found a way in, and you know, that does happen. So a question here is, will you be looking at that as well? You know, when are those sort of projects where there's serious road flooding caused, or will you be focusing on Section 19 type ones, which have more involved clearly? Working with communities is good, which I see there. Just I wondered, I don't know whether there's information out there. I have a feeling it would be really helpful to have some early on some guidance out to parish and town councils, you know, sort of making it clear what's available, what might be funded, because they're talking about it and you're seeing they're talking about it, they're coming to you, but perhaps just, I don't think I've seen something aimed at parishes and town councils in particular that, you know, lets them know, you know, what might be considered and where to feed in. I can't resist mentioning, really pleased to see you got Ninehead on there. I just feel that has to be, and it's not in my patch, but I tend to think Norton Fitzwarren as well. There's just, you know, continued problems over the year. I've no idea really what they are there, but there's clearly something that needs addressing. And just a very final point, highways maintenance, gully and ditch clear. Well, gully's certainly been mentioned, and ditch clearing. I have impression, my feeling is we cut highways maintenance back too far, and this is one of those examples that you know, we have my feeling is, and I can identify some, that there are some gullies and ditches which are in flood risk. They're, you know, they're here in areas where there's flood risk, but they're not cleared on a flood risk. They're not done annually. Some, you know, some done 4 yearly, and I do think there needs to be a reassessment somewhere here. It's not necessarily the 50 million, but maybe this is a piece of work that highways maintenance needs to do, just assess, and it might flow out of this, you know, from the areas being identified. I think we need to check that we've got the gully emptying right, because I think the budget's restricting us a bit too tightly. Okay, that's me done. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I can share the slides. Seal in terms of the strategic pot, it is there for a number of different areas. I can assure you that the things that we've highlighted in there is part of why we're trying to use this money, is seeing if we can deliver the things at pace. So Long Run Meadow hasn't been financed. There isn't. I think there's about £100,000 or something we've got highlighted for Long Run Meadow, and it's a very, very, very big scheme. It needs resource and it needs quite detailed thinking about it, because of that local connections that we mentioned, but also, you know, around the modelling that we need really around the tone. So what I'm trying to utilise is how this can be blended with some of our strategic bots to finally get on and deliver. Long Run Meadow has been probably sat on an SRA work programme for about 5 years. It's been probably, if you're looking back over Taunton Dean sort of era as well, it's probably been on work programmes there. This is an opportunity to really get some pace behind this and look at that water catchment solution really, either to deliver like TTT5 or to ensure that we've got the wheels rolling so that we can actually start drawing in other funds there as well. So we're trying to be quite creative with that. Completely agree in terms of your views around FWAG and farmers unions. They're the trusted organisation, they're the people to speak with landowners. So actually they're better to be working with in partnership rather than Somerset Council going and knocking on farmers' doors. And Somerset River Authority are integral in this as well. So Councillor Stanton, is in part of the advisory board. David Mitchell, in terms of the manager, is one of the officers which we're supporting. And we're still trying to look at the connectivities, really. So how we can integrate and find the real benefits that the additionality that Somerset River Authorities brings. It can either support some of the projects which drop out of it, or actually look at those additional mechanisms to support the coordinated collaborative plans that we're going to deliver with the communities, how that can look at the long-term solutions, both now but also past the 2 years. So that's quite a critical partnership, moving forward. We want to be able to put more support behind the River Authority. Highways, the conversations with the officers, they're part of the lead local flood authority function. So we're speaking with them. And again, ideas like the floodgates, the signage, some of the conversations we've had around Donyat and how that is working with business as usual is all part of that ongoing dialogue that we have between services. So Neil McWilliams is an example, as an officer working quite heavily with in terms of looking at some of those solutions. Nature-based solutions, especially around the runoff you mentioned about in our communities. That is part of that community conversation. So the island effect that you get within some of the communities. Why we want that engagement thing is that we could do the desk-based exercise and think we've got the answers, but it's only when you start talking to the communities and look at the ground truthing that there are things that we're unaware of, or there's solutions that we could actually deliver with those communities. So flooding, not just river flooding, surface water flood is what we're trying to address with this whole bigger thing. So drainage could be part of that answer. The big deliverables, you're right, they could be sometimes too big and might actually be a delivery time outside of 2 years. Doesn't mean it doesn't go on that plan, but we might need to look at other funding solutions, whether that's SRA or NFM funding through, say, the EA long-term and DEFRA funding scheme. So that's something that we can do. And then with the communities and guidance, we're going to create a website to be able to provide that guidance. The information about what they could get hasn't got out there because we're still designing it. So as soon as it's ready, that information to communities, to members, to MPs. There's so many people asking for information. What I'm scared about is what we put out there is going to be seen as, that is what we're delivering. So the presentation, when I share it, the caveat is these are ideas at the moment, early framework. They are not what we've agreed, because there'll be risk management authorities who will be coming after me at the end of this meeting if they think that this is the final agreed plan. So there's a lot of negotiations, a lot of work to do, a lot of listening still to do. But as soon as that information is confirmed, that comms will be out there.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in on the point about highway maintenance and the gully emptying schedule and the ditches and grips and that sort of thing, which has been mentioned a few times. So just to clarify, we haven't recently reduced the amount of resource that goes into that. A number of years ago, I'm thinking possibly 7 or 8 years ago now, we moved to a risk-based approach to gully emptying, whereby we categorised those which were more at risk in areas that were more at risk of flooding than others. So the ones that are most at risk get emptied every year. The ones that are least at risk of flooding get emptied every 4 years. We have bid for additional funding through the SRA to have an enhanced level of service in certain areas. And most recently this year, we have some additional money that the executive granted us in April to do a one-off additional gully emptying round. So this year, as a one-off, we are emptying around 100,000 gullies rather than the usual 60,000 a year. So I think in terms of use of additional resource, additional resource is always useful, but I'm not sure that the state of the gullies is necessarily a large causation factor in flooding at the moment. I think the volume of water that's coming onto the road sometimes is massive and overwhelms the system, or any system. It's not necessarily when the gully was last emptied that's the issue. However, very happy to have a conversation with James and his team around whether there is any benefit in bringing some additional resource in there. I think with the ditches and grips clearing, that's actually fairly, what I would say, close to a statutory minimum level of service, just because of where we got to over the years. So that's an area where if there was some additional resource, probably it would be worth looking at whether there's an enhancement we can make there. So yeah, just hopefully that clarifies those points. Thank you, Chair.
I'm moving on, David. Andy Kendall.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be quick. I'm going to be talking this money again. This is a fantastic grant. I'm looking at when it has to be spent. It has to be spent by 31st of March 2000 and help me, please. 7, 8.
Yeah, 28, but we've got it from September.
And I understand the protocol of going to here, there, everywhere, then back to scrutiny, then to full council to sign off on all this. Time is running out. Are you saying in certain words you're being given 50 million and you can spend it just like that on what you want? Or is there going to be a proper plan you have to submit to the DEFRA to say, look, we're going to be spending this wise? And I know you're doing your background work now. I know everyone's involved. I'm trying to keep this short, Chair, but you understand my thing. Before we know it, it's Christmas. Then we're talking about leave for this, leave for that. Your aspiration, that's right. This is like aspirations to me at the moment. You're saying it's going to be coming to full council in September. This is not a definite because you haven't done your prelims for scrutiny yet. I'm talking about the risk of what happens if this doesn't happen, that doesn't happen. Are you going to be panic buying with your large purse you're going to be having? Does this make sense to you? I know that your aspirations of the plan to go A, B, C, D done. However, my problem is in the back of my mind is what happens if not, and seeing you come back here with not an excuse but with a reason for this, and then at the end of the day we're at 2008 and suddenly nothing's been done. Or are we going to go panic buying, or do we allude with Mr. Mansell over there? Oh, and by the way, just while I'm up, while I've got the floor, Mr. O'Dowd Jones, we have a gully which has been blocked for years. It's been done over the years, been blocked for years. The Oval College roundabout. I know your solution was to put a sign there saying flood. I've been moaning about it for a long time by saying some people drive around it, some people just go sod it straight through it. Where does all the water go? Onto the pedestrians on the pavement. It's been cleared, by the way, recently. But thank you. Anyway, sorry about that.
You were going to be quick, Andy. Replied.
Yeah, certainly. So you're completely right. Part of what we're trying to do here, these are ideas, but they have got there's stock behind it. There is work that we are doing in the background to ensure that what is coming forward is achievable, or there is conversations going on as well in the background with other risk management authorities. So, for instance, the IDB, what can be delivered in those 2 years? If it's outside of the 2 years, then we can't put it onto the list. We need to be able to achieve this, and we need to be able to deliver this. So everything you've got in front of you at the moment have been ideas, but there's been a lot of conversations and a lot of work at the moment to put some substance behind that. So the idea will be in September, when that draft plan is agreed, some of the conversations that we are having with the advisory board members, with other agencies, will be that we have got a go, and we will get out. So communities, there's gambles at the moment, that community work stream. I'm hoping that my executive agreed to that approach, because I'm aligning LCN officers to be able to go booking those community dates. So there's a bit of pre-planning, but actually if the executive and the advisory board say, no, that isn't, I will pull back. So there is a project plan that part of what Piers' role will be is about delivering the SOC, the business case, which goes to DEFRA for that agreement, and that will form the executive report for moving. But it's September 28 is what we're renegotiating with DEFRA for 2 years to start from there.
Just one more quick one, Chair. Sorry, can we see a
Will it be quicker than the last one?
It's going to be 2 words. That's all it is. If we're going to have dialogue, then this will take ages. Can we see a risk register come with the next report to scrutiny, please?
Certainly, the risk register is already being drawn up by Piers. In terms of actually this going live to members, I think you found out about it about a month ago. So actually this has been delivered at pace anyway. In a month's time, that risk register will begin with the draft plan for agreement. So it will be a situation of the evidence behind it. We're trying to look at all the risks, the projects and programme deliverables, and who those lead organisations will be. So we are asking members, of the risk management authorities, who is going to take the lead on each of those projects, and I'm gearing up other services to help me. So yeah, it's and
thank you, James.
Yes.
I'm just going to say very briefly to give James a breather. I think 2 points relating to the exchange. One, the slides that we saw, there's a list there of more than £50 million worth of work. So delivery, it has to be a key criterion. I know it will be, to sifting that into the plan and the programme that you referred to, Councillor Kendall. The other important point is that, and this is a tribute to the negotiation done by the council, the £7.5 million worth of revenue in the programme, which will help us with delivery. That's the kind of accompanying resource to do all that we can to get behind the programme and make it happen. So just two relevant points, I think, related to the conversation.
Bob, do you want to come in?
I'll be brief if I can, Chair. £50 million, yeah, it's a lot of money, but it isn't. So yeah, let's get it whilst we can. It seems to me the most efficient use of any money is to get the Environment Agency to hire an enforcement officer, because I'm sure we've all got landowners that are refusing to clear out their rivers. So I don't know if we can put some encouragement on that. Going on from that, I quite agree with Dave that the danger of putting everything into one or two big projects, it is a danger. We would be far better off putting them into lots of smaller projects, because there are smaller projects waiting all over the county. We hear about Taunton, and obviously the levels are where we concentrate on, but I've heard no mention at all of the Mendip Hills, the Mendip rivers, or even Froome, which from Taunton seems a million miles away, but it is part of our community. We, in Mendip South, we've got an oven-ready, we're working with Fway, we've got an oven-ready scheme to hold water at the top of the River Allen, which would alleviate the River Allen, which is a major tributary of the Brew, which of course would help them all downstream as well. Can I ask if that's on your list, or if it's not, how can we get it on? You are the main contact, I assume, today. Okay, I will send you what I've got.
I thoroughly support that, because the Alum comes into my division when it joins the Brew. Tom Power, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've just got 2 points to make. The first one is only a small point, but I think quite an important point. Regarding the presentation, there was a slide regarding the membership of the committees, and it said, I think it said 3 executive lead members to sit on the committee. And as the opposition lead member for Communities, Environment, Climate Change, I'll be really keen to sit on that. So is there any way that I'll be able to join the committee for that? But for the second point, I just want to raise a question regarding planning permissions. And so how likely is the delays in planning permissions that will risk the successful delivery of the process of the projects within the spending window? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I can add that suggestion in terms of the dialogue with executive about having an opposition role within the advisory board. It is an advisory board, so it's not a voting role, but remember the executive function is the decision maker of the board. So I can pass that back. That's something I can take on board. In terms of planning permission, the only one that I can see off the top of my head with planning permission and why it's really only looking at planning permission, detailed design and the assessments is the long run meadow one, because it will take the 2 years, if not a bit longer, to achieve that element of the build. So that's why we've tried to look at long run meadow as not a complete build process, because we believe that could be up to 5 years and we'll need a lot more money than 50 million. So that element of the project is very much looking at detailed design, assessments and planning permission. The other areas in terms of planning, TTTC 5 is already ready to go. I don't think there's anything else in there, and I think you're right to mention that, because that would be one of those areas which could delay or scupper a project moving forward into this programme, because we need to deliver it in the 2 years.
Thank you, James. Final one, Sue Osborne, please. Are you there, Sue? You're on silent at the moment. Right, guys, there she is.
Apologies for that. I've listened to this with great interest. I'm actually coming back from my leave of absence, so forgive the gaps in my knowledge. I think I first became aware of the 50 million grant through the council's own comms operation on this. You will recall as well that before I went on leave last year, I did speak to the former Climate and Change Committee about the issue of the management of the Donia estate land, which was part of the old county farms, which we've inherited. And my proposal was that, and James Duval was there, was that you've got a golden opportunity now to actually manage it and to set an example as a landowner of best practice. And to me, it's a golden opportunity staring you in the face. Now, Donyat, I'm glad to see, is on your list, as is Ilminster, because both have suffered dreadfully through the floods. And I don't think I need to say more about the economic and the social impacts of when the A358 is closed off at Donyat, and the misery that brings to just about everybody with diverted traffic, etc. I understand that there is work proposed, I think, on the gullies, whatever. But one of the schemes they've been trying to progress is the Raps Plantation, a slow the flow project, which I think they have got support from PWAG, they have got volunteer labour. The only thing is we're not getting a lot of traction from county estates. And I was speaking to the chairman of Donyat at the local fete, who was quite glad to see me back. And his comment was that, you know, particularly with somewhere like Crow Lane, where the water just rushes through, bringing all the debris with it straight on. So all the good work that Mike and his team have done clearing the gullies is obliterated in 24 hours, is the whole issue of trade-off between trying to maximise their rental income. But on the other hand, if you want your landowners, the tenants, to manage it in a more environmentally friendly way or more flood preventative way, there's a trade-off there that needs to be addressed. So I think there's a golden opportunity there. And I would see this as being one of the things you should be looking at. Is you've now got you've got about 2,000 acres of land scattered all over the place. You are a landowner. The biggest block is round Donyat towards Ilminster by far. And I think it's just madness not to take that up, because it's frustrating to us that county estates, as it was, doesn't seem to want to engage. There is that opportunity there. I know Ilminster has got some funding because of Section 119 identified clearing drains along Station Road and down into Home Farm Way and beyond. However, there is a problem that for the whole thing to work and the whole thing to be joined up, you need all the landowners to be clearing their drains. And there are issues with the engagement or trying to get engagement with the landowners heading out beyond Winter, heading out towards the Winter Hayne Lay end. So I think there is a role there to play to join the whole thing up, because it only needs one bit to fail. and the whole proposal for trying to ease flooding in Ilminster will fall. And we also have to be mindful that what we do upstream will impact on the very small communities of the Isle Abbots and Isle Brewers, who, even in normal situations, can flood at the drop of a hat. So that's my ask of that perhaps more you use this opportunity, and it's also income generation as well, to actually come up with a holistic plan in how you're going to manage your estates longer term for the benefit of flood relief and for communities, as opposed to maximising income generation from rents. And the other point I'd like to make is, having listened to it as more has gone on, it feels more like we're talking about a fait accompli here, that you've almost decided what projects you're going to do. If you're going to be putting a plan forward to exec in September, you've already decided who's sitting on yet another project board that doesn't seem terribly accountable. And I support Tom Power's suggestion. Because for a lot of communities, smaller communities, and I support what Councillor Mansell has said, sometimes you can get a very big impact with not a massive spend. So I do urge you to perhaps try and engage more with smaller communities that have had flooding issues, give them an opportunity to make their suggestions. Because again, we knew about it from the LCN AGM, but I am concerned it's starting to feel it's going to be dominated by the usual suspects. And I say, it does feel fait accompli. Those are just my comments, Chair. But I really urge you to go back and rethink, because you were supportive at the time 6 months ago of looking at how you long-term manage your estate lands, your old county estate. It was never done in my time when I was a tenant, and I think it really does need to be done now.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you for
right. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah.
James, go.
Possible, Chair. So just on the point of the communities, that's the entire point of the communities work stream, is so that we listen to those smaller communities and come up with solutions. So that's one. Councillor Osborne, completely heard you last time, and actually the presentation, which is deferred on nature markets, is one of the 22 sites, pilot sites, is the Donyat estate. So we have got that as one of those areas to look at nature-based solutions, but also nature markets around BNG, phosphates, carbon credits, but also resilience credit opportunities as well. So there is discussions, obviously, with estates. We're using it as an example site about how we could actually look at the stackable benefits around flood alleviation as well as create credits. But there will obviously be a broader discussion around land use, and that will be a plan in the estates conversation long term. But we're hoping that the business case that we can propose, within the next 6 months, and again, Chair, that report will come forward anyway to give a bit more detail around that for Councillor Osborne. You'll be able to see how that is involved and how that connects with the wider strategies around flooding and nature recovery. So there's a lot on BAU around. The reason we're using the advisory board with the risk management authorities is they are the key water management bodies that we need to engage with when we're looking at the broader strategy for Somerset. So they are critical partners, people like Wessex Water, the Environment Agency, the IDB, are members which actually help us form the actions needed for Somerset. What we've tried to do with bringing in the executive functions is that we have that flow between the advisory board and the executive. So there's an understanding of what is potentially coming forward. In terms of the bit around, is it a completed plan? If I'm honest, as an officer, I think listening to the communities, listening to the advice come out, I've tried to shape it, and there is an element of influence in, shall I say, but I'm also very open-minded that I've got other partners still to come forward with ideas, councillors who have already said, I've got ideas that needs to come on, so we can assess it and look at that £50 million to see what is affordable and what those priorities are. So I have to work at pace. I have to probably showcase that I've already come up with the ideas, even though I haven't. This is very much ideas coming from others that I'm trying to pull together.
Thank you, James. On a personal note, I'm giving advice to all this committee that if you want stuff done in your division, you are going to have to get an about price of what it's going to cost, have that about price available through the applicants to go to James the day after the cabinet meeting, because you are going to have to prove that your project that you want in your division is doable within 2 years. You are going to have to know what it's going to cost, because at the end of the day, if you don't, James will be saying to you, what are you expecting this to cost? And you may not like it, but my parishes are already getting costings, and we will be giving to James in September the 24th a complete portfolio of what we would like to happen in my division. And I understand that Alan's not happy with me. I get it. But at the end of the day, I had no more warning than anybody else in this room. I just got on with it. And I suggest, and I'm going to recommend, that the individual councillors in their division put together plans to achieve amelioration of the flooding problems in their divisions, and they have them costed by the end of September. Because otherwise, James is not going to have a hope in hell of getting them done. Better not put that in the recommendation. The environment officer is not going to have a chance to get them finished within 2 years, because that is one of the major criteria. And I also fully accept that the timelines are terrible. They are awful, but there's nothing anyone can do. We are lucky to have got the money through Sarah Dyke. You want to add anything? Right, can I have a proposer and a seconder to get the councillors on board? Thank you. So we've got Rob Reed proposing, Dave Mansell seconding. Can I have a vote about that recommendation for the councillors? And can we get that out, please, James, through communications on the website, so that everybody who's not listening to my diatribe on that particular subject is actually given a fair warning about what they're going to have to do in the next 2 months?
It's going to be part of the engagement activities. Again, what I need to do is agree that the community's work stream actually happens, because I could be actually sending out comms without the actual directive from my executive to say that that is a work stream within the programme. So at the moment, I'm still suggesting ideas, and it would be, I personally believe it's a priority area, is to look at our communities, but I need to ensure that that is agreed by members. The communities that we've been speaking to, we're going to be doing that engagement, and I will be speaking to them about costing up some of their plans anyway, business as usual or not.
It's helpful to say as well, without putting him on the spot, that we have Steve with us as the associate lead member for the policy area. We can talk with the executive lead on the back of the conversation today.
Right, we have 2 subjects that we need to deal with today. Everything else is gone. Firstly is what's happened on our that should have been number 5, that's going to come now, and then number 11, which is anything that anybody wants added to the forward programme. And I want to keep it short and sharp. Right, James?
I will keep it very short and sharp, Chair. That's been deferred.
I'm going to suggest at the end of this meeting that we actually put an emergency meeting in to pick up the 3 subjects that we've lost, because we've yet again reached a stage when we are now at 2 o'clock, and unless we do an hour and a half break for lunch or an hour's break for lunch, we're going to be going way over the time limit that we're allowed to do it for. I've got the point. You dropped something, James.
Right, I will keep this very short. Just
say again.
We have 5 members. That's chorusy.
You've got a driver, and you've got to go home.
Right. Thank you. So, outcome tracker. One of our biggest, or one of the longest red items from the previous Climate and Place Committee will now be turning to green, because we've now had the M5 update come to the committee. So members will see that as green the next time it comes. Members are also reminded that those items that are in green at this meeting will disappear off the tracker for the next meeting. And obviously we will be adding anything from this meeting that needs adding to the tracker. Just as a reminder to members, subject to what Councillor Hobhouse just said, the next meeting is currently scheduled for the 3rd of September, which is 8 weeks today. Obviously, I suppose in theory that does give us potential scope to organise an additional meeting sometime in the middle of that period, but obviously that would be August. We'll need to have a think about whether there's a reality to that, but obviously that is a discussion for myself to have with the chair, the vice chair, and the lead officers, and that obviously we do need to fit back in the items that have been deferred today, taking Councillor Mansell's point in terms of timeliness for some of those. That was all I was going to say. Anything else? Any other suggestions?
Right, I think I pressed the wrong button. All right, so I won't say that because it'll still be there on the agenda next time. Quick suggestion, the travel plan spotlight review. I thought, we had a plan and we're more or less ready to go. I kind of hope we will find a date for that and fit it in. Perhaps I'll leave it there. To a certain extent, similarly with the climate plan workshop, although whether it's the most important thing to be doing or not, but it's been there a long time. When's it going to happen? The solar policy clarification, I would just mention, I have an idea that I found it, and I did send it to James and to Mark. So anyway, but perhaps perhaps it wasn't the right thing, but it seemed to cover what was being asked for. So I think so yeah. I'll let you know that I think it's been found. I certainly have. I supplied a document, and I certainly haven't been told it was the wrong one. Now, in terms of, so I've got a few ones here which have dropped off because clearly they were green. But I believe when they were green, I said, no, these ones haven't been done yet. They can't be green. I'm sure I said that. So we've still not got the CDS maps on broadband. We've not received them, so that shouldn't be dropping off. Similarly, Slinky data we asked for, we've not got it. Should still be on. And also the recycling centre report. But perhaps that's a bit different. Perhaps it needs to be put on our forward plan, so it's an agenda item. If that happens, then I think yes, it's off. It'll be dealt with, but otherwise we're losing. Forget it. So here we go.
I've noted those, Councillor. Thank you.
I'll follow up on the solar policy clarification point, but there's anything on that. In terms of the connecting Devon and Somerset and the mapping point, can look into that. The position is that for updating the data, we rely on BDUK's open market review data. I did a bit of checking before the meeting because I anticipated we might talk about this. BDUK undertook the latest review earlier this calendar year, hasn't yet released the data of that. Once they have done that locally, we can then kind of work from that to update the data. I'm told, apologies for the details and the time, Chair, that within the next few weeks we should be receiving the BDUK release. So it's the milestones follow from that. So Sorry, it's not, we're ready, but just to give you the picture where things are.
Okay.
Give me on a minute.
Can I move on now to the future things? Marcus, you want to put something forward?
Well, I don't really want to put something forward, and maybe I should put it up in the last one, but I do seem to recall on the last ever scrutiny meeting that we had, or whatever it was called before, that there was myself and a couple, and we had quite a long conversation about how we were going to get the situation with the bus services in Somerset looked at, and I'm trying to think who the councillor was who was talking about the Mendip side, and obviously I was banging on about bus to Bridgewater because I haven't mentioned that yet today, and I usually try and get him at least once every meeting I go to. But I think, bearing in mind what we talked about, the economy and everything else today, is that seems to have, I seem to remember the chair sat there saying, yes, we need to have that on as a first item, and then of course it wasn't on the last meeting. And look at the forward plan and there's nothing about that on the meetings at all. It seems to have disappeared in the void of changing committees, and I do still think that's quite an urgent thing that needs to be looked at. How well, I've said it before, I can say it again, but there's only 3 or 4 of us here, and the officers have heard me say it many times, so have you. So that needs to sort of find its way back on the forward plan. And just a quick question about, while we talk about connecting Devon and Somerset, so that seems to be occurring in my neck of the woods more recently, is that mobile phone coverage, which was okay in some places, suddenly seems to have gone to 5G and now is rubbish. And at what point is anyone going to talk about this? Because it can't be just in our neck of the woods that's happening, and it can't just be my phone that it's happening to. But it seems to be, I'm not the only one who said it, where we've had okay mobile phone coverage. Now we've got crap mobile phone, sorry, just said that out loud in public, sorry. We've now got a mobile phone coverage that says 5G, but it's fake. And what's happened is we've lost the mobile phone signal we had before. It's just ridiculous, and it's affecting people's lives. And
you want to come in, Mike, on that, do you?
I was just going to come back on the bus services review point, just looking at the forward plan. It is on the forward plan. It doesn't have a date yet, but there is an item on page 3 of the forward plan, which is entitled bus services. Yeah, this fourth up from the bottom on page 3. That document. So it is there, but we need to find a date for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Do we want to put phone coverage onto the forward plan? The 5 of you here, 4 of the 5 of you here, have got the opportunity to vote on that. Can we make it quick? Whatever you decide to do, I'm not going to discuss it. Do you want to come in on it?
If I could, Jack, recognise the issue. Indeed, Councillor Rigby in his portfolio role champions the point as well. We are at present undertaking a piece of work to map mobile coverage and speeds using a methodology that's used in some other places as well. Perhaps when we've completed that work, which I'll have to check the timescales for, we could provide an information briefing about that.
Is this on someone's radar?
Right. Are you happy that it comes up when the work's
I think
finished?
this committee's got enough things to
I'll
talk about at the moment.
Do you want that, guys? Silence. Okay. Anybody else? Right. I'll leave that alone. Tom, you want to put your hand up again?
Yeah, no, it's just to emphasise, I think that's a really important point to put on there, because obviously our side of Somerset Henry, our villages, is not very good coverage. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Right, yes, David.
A couple other things, if I may, which arise from yesterday's corporate scrutiny. Now, especially if we have, but there was two main items there yesterday. Now, one was the corporate plan. And I did say yesterday that really I think that should be coming to all of the scrutiny committees. So, you know, it was done briefly at the corporate one, but that's not the right place for the service specific functions, especially if we're having another meeting. That sounds like it gives us an opportunity to cover that, and I think we should. So there's a suggestion. I think the other committee members will find it interesting. Another item which was on the corporate yesterday was a planning item, which of course that function falls here, but there was reasons why it went to corporate. I think what I'd like to suggest is, so it was on SIL and section 106. I think if that report could be circulated as an information report to this committee, because it is, it's things we shouldn't want to know about, and that might cover it if that could happen. And the recycling centre one for forward plan, which you've already mentioned.
I wouldn't argue with you, having found that the difference between a parish meeting and a parish council was not understood by some people in the room. Okay, guys, I'm going to call an end of the meeting unless there's anything very important. I'm going to ask for an extra meeting to be scheduled very shortly to pick up on all the stuff that we have missed from this meeting, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.